Chapter 178. 3 hours? Sun Han thought of the question Guanshan had just asked, and her pupils shrank in an instant. She suddenly looked at the mountain forest that was still collapsing behind her. He couldn't have gone to, although the use of supernatural abilities on ordinary people was prohibited on the surface. In fact, everyone turned a blind eye to it. As long as nothing serious happened, they would pretend that they didn't see anything. But it was a different matter to actually do something to ordinary people. If it was confirmed, Qi Xingyu's behavior of seducing her colleagues would pale in comparison. Even if there was a reason for it, it would definitely be recorded as a serious demerit. The privilege that Sun Han had mentioned before belonged to class as supernatural ability users. After all, only to them. The small fries below them still had to abide by the rules. Tisk! Sun Han raised her leg, wanting to send someone to chase after him. Shuman Lin suddenly opened her arms to stop her. Guanshan just went to do some personal things. The time for him to cooperate with the investigation has already passed. Captain Sun, you have no right to interfere with the members of other teams. Sun Han was stunned. Today isn't. Shuman Lin took out her phone and said, "It's now 2 a.m. on the 3rd of December. It's been exactly 16 days since we last entered the Noon Brigade's base. According to the rules, the time for filing a supernatural ability case is 15 days. You have no right to interfere with him." Sun Han stopped in place. "So, you want to cover up for him?" Shuman Lin shook her head and looked directly at Sun Han. "I'm not covering up for him. I'm just being reasonable. If there's a problem with Guan Shan's behavior, then the Yohao group will investigate and take responsibility. Not you." Captain Sunday. Sun Han was silent for a while. She looked at the mountain forest that was gradually covered in flames, took a deep breath, and said, "Okay, I really don't have a right." She looked deeply at Shuman Lin. "But out of the obligation of the 10 formation, I will still organize people to search and rescue. If anything is found during the search, I will still deal with it according to the rules." Guanshan shuttled through the flames in the mountain and rushed toward Baihe village. The recording pen in his hand was playing Li Jing's last words. "I'm Li Jing, the president of Hangzhou Evening News. What I'm going to say next is the truth that I've seen with my own eyes and obtained through various channels. There's a USB flash drive in the interlayer of this recording pen, and it contains all the information that I've sorted out. If someone discovered this recording pen, I would probably be dead already. They have already noticed my movements. Based on what I've seen and heard, this village is used to killing people. This village is called White River Village. 7 years ago, when I came here as a volunteer teacher, I had already noticed that something was wrong. The way some of the children talked and acted was not like the children of the mountain village. But at that time, I didn't think too much about it. Besides, my teaching time was short, so I returned to school very quickly. In the blink of an eye, 7 years have passed. Some time ago, I accidentally saw a missing person notice. The child on it was exactly the same as a child I taught in White River Village 7 years ago. I almost immediately understood why I felt that something was wrong back then. It's very likely that those children were abducted and sold. After that, I searched through all the platforms that could publish missing person notices and found 3 more missing children. A terrifying conjecture appeared in my mind. In order to understand the truth, I returned to White River Village. When Guanshan heard this, he suddenly realized that President Li didn't really want to advertise White River Village on the spur of the moment. She had noticed that something was wrong before she came. What happened next was basically the same as what Guanshan understood. Li Jing gradually investigated deeper and discovered the belief of the Bee God, as well as the practice of living sacrifices in the village. In order to prevent the secret of White River Village from being leaked, the village chief prepared to silence them. I didn't see the oracle that they mentioned, but it's most likely a scoundrel who pretends to be mysterious. It's very likely that he's the leader of the human traffickers who sold them with the excuse of sacrificing them to the gods. And before this oracle came, White River Village's belief in the Bee God already existed. At that time, they wouldn't leave anyone alive. In other words, before the oracle came, the abducted children were livestock for sacrifice. After they came, they became commodities and breeding tools. This tradition has been going on for who knows how many years. Ba Ping's mother is a very obedient and sensible child. She's also very smart. Her real name should be Lu Wan. Her parents are ordinary people with average wages. In order to find her, they almost went bankrupt, but they still haven't given up. Ba Ping was taken away by the oracle. Not long after, he returned with both his legs missing. Other than abducted children from outside the village, when a number of sacrifices isn't enough, they would even cruelly use their own children as substitutes. I found a couple who were willing to cooperate. They had worked outside the village before and had a certain level of education. They also wanted to escape. Their child became a sacrifice last year, but they heard that he had escaped. They asked me if I had seen their child. Their child's name is Baku, which means beautiful jade. They once gave Baku a pure silver plate with the letters BK engraved on it. It was Baku's name. But the next day, they were gone. Those people were going to make their move tonight. I knew that I wouldn't be able to escape, but strangely enough, I heard a voice. It said that it could help me survive. I agreed. It's under the swamp of the cave. I know it's there. I don't know what the final result is, but please, you who found this recording pen must reveal the truth to the public so that those children can return home. Guanshan stopped at the entrance of White River Village. Looking at the recording pen in his hand, he couldn't help but curse. F***CK. BK is Baku. He had already seen the spider monster that had surrounded and killed him on the bus with Tao Luo. Its original form was that of an unknown child. He was an experimental subject and awakened the teleportation ability. He used it to escape, but later he was captured by the killer bees and brainwashed into a killing tool. And BK was just one of the children that had been harmed by the killer bees for so many years. Many more people couldn't even withstand the sublimation candy and were buried in the mountains. Guanshan couldn't suppress his anger. In the recording, Li Jiying had found more than 40 children's names. He took a deep breath and took out a special item that he had obtained a long time ago from his backpack. Broken metal plate, special scene activation item. Effect: after use, it will forcibly activate a simulation in the current area and trigger a special scene. Description: this is an old metal plate. It seems to have wandered for a long time. One corner is missing, but it is still carefully preserved. Only the letters B and K that were once engraved on it could be seen clearly. It seems to represent someone's final destination. Fallen leaves return to their roots. Lost paths return home. Youth is fleeting, gone is gone. So that's what that scammer meant. BK will return to his hometown, and President Li will be killed here. Guanshan walked step by step toward the village surrounded by flames. The villagers were putting out the fire. Panicked people knelt on the ground to beg for the bee god's protection. The ground was littered with dead bodies. He put on the mask, and a metal plate in his hand disappeared into the air. Guanshan's eyes behind the mask were dark, reflecting the dancing flames. He raised the demon blade. And I will be an idiot for once. The world before his eyes changed again. All the villagers changed. Although Guanshan had the information, he didn't know who had done evil and who hadn't. But that was fine. The simulator would help him make the judgment. Scene scan complete. Generating horror game. Generated horror game. Battle Royale. Plot loading. Please wait. PS1. Thank you. I'm Bamboo. Men are not cute. Great old 1A. Social awesome. Rotten Mandarin fish steak. I'm a silver coin tip. PS2. Woohoo. Please vote. Chapter 179. Although Sun Han said that she was organizing a search and rescue operation, in just half an hour, the fire caused by the explosion had covered almost half of the mountain, and Sun Han's search and rescue operation had encountered a great obstacle. Just as Drone 1 had said, metahumans below a rank were no different from ordinary people when faced with a natural disaster. They were just slightly smaller ants and slightly larger ants. The strongest metahuman present was Sun Han, and Sun Han's ability was fixed-point explosion. In the end, they could only wait for the logistics team to come and extinguish the fire. The logistics team looked at the fire that almost dyed the dark night sky red and decisively dialed 119. 3 hours later. Captain Sun, the fire is barely under control. We can go in and search and rescue now. The logistics team reported to Sun Han with dejected faces. "Search and rescue my ass," Sun Han grumpily said. She muttered in her heart. If her guess was correct, then the villagers of White River Village who were still alive should be dead by now. Should they save the corpses? She used her hand to support herself and jumped down from the rock. She looked at the forest that had almost turned into ruins with a hopeless expression. She had deep doubts about her ability. Why isn't my ability rain? Otherwise, I wouldn't have to sit and wait like this for 3 hours. If I find any clues, I guarantee that you will never be able to turn green again. Sun Han sighed and called for people to enter the mountain for rescue. She then led the logistics team to rush to White River Village. Although she said that she would not be able to rescue her ass, the operation was still very fast. They arrived within 10 minutes. Stop! Sun Han had just seen the outline of the village from afar when she ordered everyone to stop and split up. That huge queen bee was still lurking underground, and they could not let their guard down. She had mentally prepared herself, but when she walked into the village, she could not help but frown. However, it was not because the scene was unbearable, but because there was simply no one there. That's right, in the village, other than the collapsed houses, chickens, ducks, and livestock running around, as well as the fires that could be seen everywhere, there was only charred ground. What happened? Sun Han frowned and squatted down to pick up a handful of soil and smell it. Although the surrounding smoke and fire had covered a portion of the smell, there was still a strong smell of blood. Moreover, it was moist and very fresh. Sun Han ordered his men to search the entire village and finally found 9 survivors in a small house. There were both men and women among the survivors. Most of them were women, and most of them were disabled. They were all shivering in the corner, and some of them were holding forks and shovels as weapons. When they saw people coming in, their first reaction was to raise their weapons. They were stunned when they saw that these people were all wearing uniforms. Then, they were pressed to the ground. When Sun Han saw this, he heaved a sigh of relief. It seemed that at least there was a goal, and the situation had not developed to the point of no return. Part of his worries were unnecessary. A little girl with 2 pigtails ran over and tugged at Sun Han's trousers. "Big sister, can Ayang go home now?" Sun Han squatted down and asked, "Your name is Ayang, right? Where is your home in this village?" "My home is there." Ayang first pointed outside, then shook his head. Biting his finger, he said blankly, "I don't think he's here." Sun Han asked again, "Where are the others in the village?" Ayang thought for a moment and said, "He's gone." Sun Han switched to the photo of Guan Shan on his phone, stared at Ayang and asked, "How did he disappear? Did he do it?" Ayang was stunned, then suddenly covered his mouth and shook his head hard. Sun Han's gaze turned to the others. "What about you? Have you seen him?" There was silence. The door of the house was not closed, and the windows were not closed. They could see outside clearly, but these people were all silent. Ba Ping, who was behind, suddenly crawled over and took out a crumpled piece of paper from his clothes. He tried to hand it to Sun Han. Ba Ping raised his head and looked at him. Although the little boy was young, his eyes were clear and firm. Sun Han was stunned. He first checked the disabled parts of Ba Ping's body and immediately saw that the wounds on Ba Ping's body were man-made. "Hiss, these people are all disabled?" Sun Han raised his head and asked the logistics team next to him. After the inspection, the logistics team nodded. They reported that the wounds were man-made and had been healed for many years. Basically, all of them had their tongues cut off and their legs chopped off. Other than that, there were some who had mental problems like Ayang, but their body parts were still intact. This kind of behavior was obviously to cover up something. Sun Han looked at the paper that Ba Ping handed to him. Although it was crumpled and covered in mud and blood, it seemed to have been hidden for a long time. However, it was still obvious that it was a missing person's notice. The person printed on it was the little girl, Ayang. After reading the missing person's notice, Sun Han let out a long breath. "Okay, I understand why Guan Shan did that. These people should have been abducted, but other than this missing person's notice, I'm afraid there is no one else who could testify to their origins. They are illiterate, unable to speak, unable to walk. Even if they are rescued, there is no way for them to go to court and find their families. If we follow the normal procedure, This village will probably still exist, but these people will never see the light of day again. Sun Han folded the missing person's notice and put it in his pocket. Then he said, "Let's go. Take them home." The person in charge of the logistics team hesitated. "What about the others?" Sun Han glanced at him and said, "There is no one else. Isn't there only so many people in this village? Take them out and find a place to settle down. Then, let's wait for Guan Shan to deal with it himself." The person in charge of the logistics team scratched his head, but Sun Han had already walked out. The rest of the people looked at each other and finally could not help but cry. Tears streamed down their faces as they cried silently. Not long after Sun Han walked out, he saw Guan Shan standing next to an old tree at the entrance of the village. Beside him was a long saber that emitted a dark red glow. The winding patterns on the saber looked as if it had been cast by fire, as if it had just drunk blood. "Oh, what a coincidence." Guan Shan looked surprised. "This mountain fire is really big. It was not easy to get here, but I didn't expect to be one step late. How is it, Captain Sun? Is the village okay? How could this person lie through his teeth? Did you get lost in such a big fire for 3 hours?" Sun Han's mouth twitched. "It's okay, but we are not responsible for taking in normal people. Why don't you think of a way?" It was obvious that she did not want to take in these troublesome people. However, since she could say something like that, it meant that she did not want to pursue the matter. Guan Shan smirked and kept the saber. "Okay, I'll think of a way." In front of him was the checkout screen. Game simulation completed. Battle Royale. Final boss killed. 1-to-1. Rating normal monsters killed. 3,838. Rating obtained item. Heart of Massacre *1. Rating perfect obtained reward. Game coins *700. All rewards have been sent to your backpack. Please check. Checkout complete. Please wait patiently for the next simulation to start. This simulation was not difficult at all, so the rewards were pitiful. However, it was the first time Guan Shan had initiated a simulation without any regrets. He was even in a good mood. As for why the villagers were missing, he would have to ask the queen bee, who was eating happily. Chapter 180. As a B-level paranormal, Sun Han's explosion had caused some damage to the queen bee. In addition to the damage caused by Drone 1, half of its limbs were destroyed, its body was also damaged, and it was pushed back into the ground by the mudslide. As a result, when Guan Shan stepped into White River Village, he once again heard the faint voice of the queen bee. Hungry. Guan Shan was speechless. This guy was also hungry when he first contacted it, and it was still hungry now. He didn't know if it was because President Li didn't give it enough consciousness, or it couldn't think when it was weak. Other than the little useful information that Guan Shan had given him when he asked for help, it was just like the ordinary bees that he had communicated with before. It only acted on instinct. It seemed that it would only have a little bit of rationality when it was full. But the queen bee didn't care what Guan Shan was thinking. It only knew how to say that it was hungry. What should he do? President Li was still in this guy's body. He couldn't let it starve to death, right? So the kind Guan Shan turned around and saw that there was a lot of fresh food in front of him. It was even crying and shouting to see the queen bee. Anyway, wasn't it natural for believers to sacrifice themselves for a hungry god? They should be very happy. Guan Shan felt that he was really a good person, helping the believers and God to complete the two-way cooperation. He ran. It chased. They couldn't escape even if they had wings. The scene was quite beautiful. The protagonist of this great battle royale wasn't Guan Shan, but the hungry queen bee. So the believers got the opportunity to have close contact with God. The queen bee got food, and Guan Shan completed the simulation. A win-win situation. It was perfect. All right. Guan Shan drove the car, and there was a trunk full of disinfectant in the car. When the simulation was activated, it had a healing effect. Guan Shan tried it, and found that it was also effective against monsters. Therefore, in order to prevent the queen bee from not being full, Guan Shan fed it the disinfectant along with the car. Presumably, the villagers mixed with the healing medicine could survive for a longer time. Guan Shan felt that he was really kind. His mother opened the door for kindness. He was so kind. Sun Han ordered his men to bring the rest of the villagers back to the base. Then, he checked the area again to make sure that the queen bee wasn't moving for the time being. Then, He walked out with Guan Shan to meet up with the rest of the troops. However, this area of the forest would probably be sealed off for quite some time. Sun Han didn't pay much attention to the fact that Guan Shan's car was gone. After all, it was probably destroyed in a fire halfway through the journey. He couldn't possibly shout to Kizua Laura and then smash her to death with his off-road vehicle, right? When Shuman Lin saw that Guan Shan and Sun Han had returned together, and it seemed like they hadn't been held accountable, she finally breathed a sigh of relief. She went up to him and asked anxiously, "Where are the kidnapped children?" "I've already sent them to the base. We'll think of a way to settle them down in a few days." Guan Shan smiled at her and whispered to her in the earpiece, "Thank you." On the way, Sun Han told Guan Shan about Shuman Lin's interference, which surprised him. He didn't ask Shuman Lin for help, but the latter spontaneously helped him buy time. She even confronted a very strong B-class psychic. Previously, Guan Shan had always been outside of the Youhao group, but now, with Shuman Lin's help, he felt that he belonged to a certain team. Shuman Lin also smiled and said proudly, "You're welcome. This is what I should do." But then she realized that she was actually acting on her own. She said nervously, "I didn't do it on purpose. It was just an impulse. It shouldn't be a bad thing, right?" Guan Shan couldn't help but laugh. "You're my customer service, not my subordinate. In theory, non-staff members are the same as official team members. You're here to monitor me, so of course you can make your own decisions. You should know better than I do. Besides, I really have to thank you this time." Shuman Lin was stunned. She stammered, "You know I'm here to monitor you?" Guan Shan rolled his eyes and looked at her as if she was an idiot. He asked, "Which customer service needs to squat in the corner 24 hours a day? After that phone call in the middle of the night, I know what kind of person you are." Most of the files that belonged to him were from Shuman Lin's reports. How could she know so much just from a phone call? But then again, in the eyes of others, he was most likely a lunatic who could pull out a knife and kill anyone at any time. But it really couldn't be blamed on him. It was the simulator and the people who came to kill him. They were the ones who started first. Shuman Lin smiled awkwardly and asked, "Can I help to settle the victims?" Of course. Guan Shan realized that Shuman Lin seemed to be a little too concerned about the victims who were abducted. But it was normal. Shuman Lin and Guan Shan had never met before, but she was still able to help him and send Jiang Sign to the hospital. Judging from her behavior, she and Byakuya should have a lot in common. Sun Han suddenly came over and said expressionlessly, "Don't talk anymore. Go back to the base to do the procedures. Since the investigation of the room has ended, then we have no obligation to continue monitoring you. The killer bee is the main responsibility of Youhao Group. You have to go to Hangzhou to do the filing. In other words, you can go back." She even felt relieved in her heart. Guan Shan's nickname was not right at all. He was not a demon. He was more like a plague. Originally, the Noon Brigade's days were quite peaceful. But when he came, there were 3 murder cases in a row, and the workload doubled. She also lost a deputy captain, so there was more work to do. At this moment, she thought carefully and even felt that she was a little unreasonable when she wanted to investigate Guan Shan. Why do you care about him? If you care about him, you will be the one who will be in trouble. Forget it, just let him be. She just hoped that he would not harm the Noon Brigade again. In Sun Han's complicated and relieved mood, they boarded the helicopter again. Guan Shan was also full of joy. He could finally go back and see little comrade Shun. He had just confessed, and they had been separated for half a month. During this period, they only had 1 phone call. Because of the depression in his heart, he didn't have time to think about it. Now that he said that he could go back, he realized that he missed Shun Dinghua. Guan Shan sat in the side seat of the helicopter and was about to close the door. Looking down from above, he suddenly saw a foot sticking out from the ground among the scorched earth and trees. It even waved as if it was saying goodbye to him. However, this scene disappeared in a flash, and the foot immediately drilled back into the ground. Buzz, 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 the worker bee pendant hanging around Guan Shan's neck began to tremble again. Guan Shan was stunned. He took it out and looked at it. The alien wasp in the glass container had been completely revived. It was full of vitality and was using its slender feet to slap the wall of the container. "Let me out. A clear voice appeared in Guan Shan's ears again. He raised his eyebrows and responded in the same way. Queen bee, why are you on this worker bee? I can control these worker bees, and I can also attach my consciousness to them. That guy used to use this method to control humans. But the difference is that where my consciousness is, my ability is there. So now, the one underground is just an empty shell, and this little thing is the queen bee. I see. Then what about presently? What about her consciousness? She is me, and I am her. No, you're not her. Guan Shan shook his head and his eyes turned cold. I can tell. We are indeed one. Even I am just a consciousness that belongs to this body based on her. But her consciousness has lost its original body and is too fragile. It needs to reestablish a connection with this body. Although he didn't know the principle, this creature seemed to have a knack for connecting consciousness. Guan Shan pondered for a moment and said, since your own consciousness has been produced, can presently be separated and independent again? I'm afraid that's impossible. Her body has been destroyed. If there is no other suitable body, separating from me is equivalent to dispersing her soul. This is tricky. Although I was forced to do it at the time, how am I going to explain to President Li's family? If Hangzhou Evening News doesn't have President Li, is Jiangshan going to take over or directly close down? Guan Shan frowned. There's a way. The queen bee suddenly said, just like when you were in contact with her before, she can project her consciousness in reality. Ordinary people won't notice anything strange. Guan Shan thought about it and felt that it was indeed a way. At that time, even he was deceived for a long time. The queen bee said, can you let me out? This place is too small. Guan Shan nodded and opened the glass container. As soon as the alien wasp came out, it immediately flew out of the helicopter and disappeared in the blink of an eye. Haha, human, thank you for helping me out. Guan Shan heard the queen bee's wild laughter, but he just looked at it with a very calm expression. He held the glass container of the worker bee pendant and raised his hand to put it into his backpack. P.S. Knocking on the bowl, begging for votes, eagerly hugging the thigh of the reader. Chapter 181. Let me out. Guan Shan had just gotten off the helicopter when he heard the voice of the queen bee again. I'll let you go. Guan Shan shrugged and helplessly opened the glass container again. Here, you can go. The alien wasp stuck its head out of the glass container, but it didn't fly away. Instead, it repeated angrily, let me out. Guan Shan's eyes were pure, but his expression was puzzled. I really let you go. I didn't stop you from leaving. It's not like I didn't want you to leave. The queen bee was furious. It slammed the glass container. Then how did I come back? Guan Shan was puzzled. Yeah, how did you come back? I don't know. Shouldn't I be asking you this question? The queen bee that had just gained consciousness was suddenly confused. Yeah, I went out, but I came back again. The subject was I, so it was its own action. So, generally speaking, it seemed like it was its own problem. The queen bee hesitated for a moment. It looked at Guan Shan's pure expression and fell in a deep thought. Is it really my problem? Is there a problem with the body of this worker bee? This guy really didn't stop me at all and let me fly away. The queen bee paused for a while before it carefully climbed out of the glass container. Seeing that Guan Shan didn't move, it flew away again. Guan Shan smiled innocently and put the worker bee pendant back into his backpack again. Out of curiosity, he tried to separate the worker bee's body from the glass container and put them back into his backpack separately. The conclusion was that if the simulator determined that something was the same item, even if it was separated manually, once it was put back into the backpack, it would return to its original state. Therefore, the queen bee that was attached to this worker bee was undoubtedly walking into a trap. As long as Guan Shan had any part of the pendant in his hands, he could put it back into his backpack and catch the escaping queen bee no matter how far it ran. The rules of the simulator were directly applied to concepts. Therefore, it didn't matter whether the worker bee was dead or alive, whether it was an ordinary wasp or possessed by the queen bee. It was just a part of the worker bee pendant, nothing more. However, the interface of the worker bee pendant had changed, and there was a lot of information. Drone pendant. Effect. After wearing it, You will obtain the ability of animal communication, Bee Swarm, and summon the sealed artifact, Bee Queen. Description: a glass pendant that seals the spiritual body of some ancient creature. If you can use its ability, you might gain something good. However, it doesn't seem very smart. Bee Queen, sealed artifact, HP. 1 description: an ancient creature that controls the connection law. Its origins are unknown. It was once worshipped as a god and used as a tool. From this information, it could be seen that the queen bee had existed longer than Guan Shan had imagined. Not only before Drone 1 came to White River Village, but also before White River Village was formed. This mindless flesh worm had been dormant underground for many years and experienced many changes before it was finally discovered by the villagers of White River Village. In addition, the queen bee's ability was finally given a clear explanation. Connection. Effect. By using the appropriate method, it can connect anything, ignoring all differences and obstacles. Description: Big Brother. This ability could only be said to be a little heaven-defying. Maybe it could be used to make a chimera. Ahem. Such an inhumane thing was obviously impossible. It was ridiculous enough to try to piece the genes together like Drone 1. The reason why the queen bee's blood could be used to make sublimation candy and allow ordinary people to awaken their superpowers was probably because the rules it mastered could connect the superpower genes with the genes of ordinary people. However, with the destruction of the killer bees, even the queen bee was taken away by Guan Shan. Drone 1's plan had been completely declared a failure. Guan Shan smiled and took out the worker bee pendant from his backpack again. As expected, another mutated wasp had been stored inside. The queen bee was silent for a while. It was so angry that its head was buzzing. "Let me out." Guan Shan spread his hands. "I really let you out. Why did you come back?" The queen bee struggled in the glass container and slammed into the wall. It said angrily, "Stop pretending. You are the one who did this. Despicable, despicable human." Guan Shan walked into the base and laughed in his heart. "You also know that I am pretending. Then do you think I can see that there is a problem with you? After gaining consciousness and looking back on the years you spent underground, you must want more, right? You didn't even mention it. Do you want to cooperate with me, or do you want to do it alone? Isn't it easy to tell? I also want you to be free, but unfortunately, my beloved president is now being kidnapped by you. I can only kidnap you in exchange for one." The queen bee was speechless. "What kind of kidnapping is this? The terrorists kidnapped your family, so you kidnapped the terrorists in return?" Even if it had just gained consciousness, it knew that something was wrong. Something was wrong, but what was more frightening was that it couldn't do anything about it. It didn't know what had just happened. As it flew, it directly hit the glass. When it looked again, it had already re-entered the glass pendant. It was like this twice in a row. It was not a coincidence. It had already been controlled by this human. Could it be that it had to succumb to this human again? The queen bee became autistic. Guan Shan didn't care about it. He only said, "I am different from Drone 1. I am not interested in using you as a blood-producing tool. As long as President Lee is safe, I will not care about what you do as long as it is not bad. Think about it yourself." Guan Shan followed Sun Han to finish the follow-up work of filing. He signed a bunch of documents and was finally allowed to fly back to Hangzhou on the Tan Formation's private plane. But before that, he had to fill in a report about Drone 1's escape. Sun Han ran to contact the Yohao group. As Guan Shan wrote, he checked his rewards. After this simulation, he reached level 19. He only needed 40,000 experience points to level up. In other words, after another simulation, he would welcome the second breakthrough mission. Guan Shan was not as resistant as before. On the contrary, he was looking forward to it. This was because the breakthrough mission meant that the shop would be refreshed. He had now accumulated 94,042 game coins, which could be considered quite wealthy. When the shop refreshed next time, it would be more than enough for him to use, even if he didn't sweep it clean. The simulator seemed to have noticed this as well. This time, the reward for completing the simulation wasn't game coins. Instead, it gave him a backpack expansion slot and 2 skill points. Guan Shan was leisurely thinking about how to add his skill points. When Sun Han contacted the Yohao group via video call, everyone's expression was very interesting. At this moment, The members of the U Brigade and the other assembled teams were in the underground stronghold of the Killer Bees. The battle had already subsided, and the other members had all been captured. Some were dead, some were captured, but they still couldn't find the culprit, Drone 1. At the front of the team was Xia Lei and the A-level paranormal sent by the higher-ups. The latter was wearing a black hooded sweatshirt and a mask. His whole body was wrapped so tightly that only a man could be seen. The A-level paranormal's information was not publicly available, so they had no way of knowing which one it was. Tang Ji and Chen Yunpeng had nothing to do. They were whispering to each other in the corner. This guy asked if Guan Shan was here. Could it be that he's unhappy? No way, why not? I heard that a lot of people think that Guan Shan is too unstable. What if he's one of those extreme people? Otherwise, he doesn't know Guan Shan. Why would he ask about this? But speaking of which, where did Drone 1 go? It's useless for that A-level paranormal to come here. The main character is not here. I'd like to see a battle between A-level paranormal. Xia Lei was a little surprised when he received the video call, but he still picked it up. The projected image attracted everyone's attention. Xia Lei looked at the screen in confusion and said in a deep voice, "What's wrong? Did something happen to Guan Shan again?" The Noon Brigade had just contacted them not long ago, and twice in a row. It was no wonder that Xia Lei had such a reaction. Sun Han shook his head. "There's nothing wrong with him." Xia Lei nodded and was about to continue asking. "There's something wrong with Drone 1, Sun Han said. Sun Han said, Drone 1 came to Liaoshan and was bumped into by Guan Shan. He is now dead. Xia Lei? Question mark. Everyone. Chapter 182. Everyone looked at each other, and the seeds in Tang Ji and Chen Yunping's hands fell to the ground. Not only were the two of them chatting with nothing to do, they were even secretly eating the seeds. But because the battle was over, no one cared about them. Tang Ji was greatly shocked. Are you serious? Drone 1 foot went to Liaoshan? He really knows how to run. He must have crossed half of Huaxia. We were like headless flies looking for him for a long time, but he just abandoned Killer Bee and left. He was amazed. Do you think the members of Killer Bee will hate him or continue to be loyal to him if they know about this? Chen Yunpeng didn't know what to say. His eyes were dull as he mumbled. Isn't the point that he was killed by Guan Shan? Only then did Tang Ji react. His eyes widened. Super, Guan Shan, why is it him again? Hiss. Wait, why is he also in Liaoshan? Could it be that he already expected Drone 1 to go to Liaoshan? Hiss. That's not the point. Drone 1 is a Class A. Didn't Guan Shan say that he was at most a Class C? Even if Drone 1 is a brain development ability user, his combat power is at least equivalent to a Class B. Otherwise, he wouldn't have asked that Class A to help. Could it be that Guan Shan is actually... Hiss. Tang Ji gasped for a long time and almost bit his own tongue, but he still couldn't calm his emotions. The more he thought about it, the more magical it felt. Although Guan Shan didn't have any energy reaction, which affected his judgment, his combat experience was obvious to all. So his judgment was basically that he was a Class C, close to a Class B. Could it be that he has already broken through to Class B? Tang Ji thought about it, and this was the only possibility. But this was F***king illogical. When they first came into contact with Guan Shan, he was still injured when dealing with the C-rank Tao Luo. Now, in less than 2 months, he was already able to kill an A-rank Esper. This leveling speed, was it really reasonable? Are you sure this is the leveling process of an ability user and not a pay-to-win mobile game? Compared to Tang Ji's suspicions about Guan Shan's increase in strength, the sharper people's attention fell on why Guan Shan happened to be in Liaoshan and killed Drone 1. There were so many places in Huaxia, but these two people who had a grudge against each other just happened to bump into each other. No matter how he thought about it, one of them must have done it on purpose. As for Drone 1, it was obviously impossible for him to seek his own death. The A-rank ability user wearing a mask chuckled and said, "This person is really interesting. I heard that he is a reporter. Could it be that this identity really gives him a buff?" The A-class Esper stroked his chin and pondered. Maybe I should also find a job as a reporter. Maybe those criminals that we can't catch will come here on their own. Xia Lei smiled and declined to comment. He didn't show it on his face, but in his heart, He was wondering whether this was Guan Shan's own doing or the arrangement of that existence called Shun Dinghua. His own thoughts were biased towards the latter. An existence with such a strong desire for control, there was no reason for her to leave an unstable factor behind. But on the other hand, she didn't do it herself. According to Xia Lei's conjecture, there seemed to be a kind of training for Guan Shan in it. And now, looking back at the entire process of the killer bee's destruction, the root of the turning point was actually because the experimental subjects, Zhao Hong and his wife, accidentally involved Guan Shan with them when they lured the prey. And perhaps it was precisely to make the killer bees no longer be a threat to Guan Shan that a certain behind-the-scenes manipulator made Guan Shan destroy the killer bees step by step. This logic sounded a bit ridiculous, but thinking about it carefully, it was surprisingly consistent with the development of all the events. As the only person in the know, Xia Lei saw a lot more than the others. Unfortunately, he couldn't say it, otherwise he might have to spend the night at Wallace's. The A-class Esper suddenly looked at Sun Han and said, "But you only said that Drone 1 is dead. What about LV Yongxi?" Drone 1-inch claimed that his real name was LV Yongxi. This wasn't a secret, he said it himself, and the other drones sometimes called him Boss LV. But there wasn't any information about this name in the archives, so it might be a fabricated pseudonym. Generally, Drone 1 was used as a substitute. Sun Han was a bit surprised by this statement that separated the two. She also knew that Drone 1 was just a sock puppet because of Guan Shan's statement. However, from the looks of it, this unknown A-rank metahuman already knew about it. But after all, the other party was an A-class Esper. It was very possible that he had his own special ability or other channels, so it wasn't surprising. So Sun Han said truthfully, Drone 1 committed suicide. After investigation, his body was completely mechanical and controlled by a consciousness transmission device with the blood of the queen bee as the main material. And his real body, according to Guan Shan, is most likely in Yingzhou. The A-class Esper raised his eyebrows. Did Drone 1 say it himself? Or does Guan Shan have this kind of ability? Sun Han said, "It's a psychic item in Guan Shan's hands. It can be used to monitor the other party through their eyes, but it can only be used once." This was Guan Shan's explanation. In fact, the eyeball plexus could be used repeatedly, but the kiss of the red lips was a one-time use. But he also realized that he had so many abilities and so many psychic items in the eyes of others. Sooner or later, he would attract covetous eyes, so he changed his explanation. Although it was because of this killer bee that they had been chasing him, now that the killer bee was gone, they might be able to have some peace and quiet for a while. Naturally, they would have to keep a low profile. The A-class Esper pondered for a moment, then looked at Xia Lei. "Since that's the case, my mission is considered complete. Senior Xia." Xia Lei didn't have any reaction to this title. He was still very calm. He turned his head and said in a low voice, "Thank you for your help." Under the snow. The A-class Esper's face twitched violently. He tried hard to control his expression. "I lost. Can we not talk about that? I'm now called Ro." Xia Lei chuckled and showed the expression of an elder. "Isn't that the code name you picked yourself? I think it's quite nice. Under the snow, it's very poetic. Is there any special meaning to it? Don't say it. I beg you." Zero's whole body trembled, and he was overwhelmed with shame. He roared in his heart, "Am I supposed to tell you that it's the name of a female character in a Yingzhou cartoon, and that I, as an otaku, like her a lot, so I used her name as a code name?" It was all a mistake he made when he was young. When he awakened his ability, he was only a high school student. He was at the age of 8th grader syndrome. He didn't even think about it before using this name. Fortunately, code names could be changed. Otherwise, he would have jumped off a building to commit suicide. Zero said in a hopeless tone, "There's no special meaning. I'm leaving. Goodbye. Please don't contact me for the time being. Mentor Xia." After saying that, he ran away in a sorry state. Xia Lei was puzzled. He didn't know what he had said wrong to make this young man run away. Done. Guan Shan completed his report with satisfaction. He also finished looking at his harvest. This time, he had obtained 2 materials and 2 items. 3 of them were taken from Drone 1. Chapter 183. Machinery Heart, Damaged Air Cannon, and Arcana Stripper were all obtained from Drone 1. Among them, Machinery Heart and Damaged Air Cannon were materials that could be added into the furnace core. The appearance of these two things subverted Guan Shan's understanding of the furnace core. He originally thought that the so-called furnace could only produce cold weapons, and the projection of the furnace core was indeed a scene of a group of blacksmiths surrounding a forging furnace. But now it seemed that this thing could not be measured by scientific logic. Not only could it produce cold weapons, but it could also produce firearms and even robots. Machinery Heart. Effect. After being put into a forging container with other parts, there is a chance that it will become a suitable weapon. Description. From a mechanical structure with destructive power as its main purpose. As its main source of power, it seems to constantly emit a deep roar of iron and fire. Guan Shan did not understand, but he was greatly shocked. This thing was the power core of Drone 1's robot body. If this thing was thrown into the furnace, what could it produce? Other than robots, there was probably nothing else. Damaged Air Cannon. Effect. After being put into a forging container, there is a chance that it will become a suitable weapon. Description. From a mechanical structure with destructive power as its main purpose. As its main firepower composition, it seeks to instantly shatter flesh and blood. Of these two materials, the former had to be combined with other parts to be effective, while the latter could be forged alone. However, to maximize the efficiency of the materials, Guan Shan, of course, had to throw the two together. Otherwise, the former would be useless. However, he had to wait until he returned to Hangzhou. The furnace core was still in his warehouse. The Arcana Stripper was a powerful tool. Arcana Stripper, 3/3. Effect. Extract a temporary skill from the target. It does not occupy the skill bar. This appears after use. Description. Give it to me. This should be the tool that was materialized from the rotating device on Drone 1's arm. The mechanism looked exactly the same, but Drone 1's tool was definitely more complicated to operate. The tool given by the simulator was obviously faster and more convenient. Directly extract and use. However, it could only be used 3 times, and the skill would disappear after it was used. It was equivalent to a single-use item. However, if used properly, the effect should be quite good. Other than that, there was also a Heart of Slaughter, which felt like an advanced version of the Butcher's Heart. In addition to the increase in strength and speed, there was also a 3-second super armor, which made him immune to all negative statuses. At the same time, the damage received was reduced by 15%. If this item was combined with Guan Shan's level 4 Mage Withdrawing, the Protection Mage Weth could reduce damage by 35%, which would add up to 50%. Guan Shan had added the 2 skill points to Mage Withdrawing and Shadow Clone. This was equivalent to reducing the damage by half. It could be said to be quite impressive. If he were to encounter a monster that could launch high-frequency attacks in a short period of time, this item would be extremely useful. After checking his harvest, Guan Shan couldn't wait to go back to Hangzhou. Coincidentally, Sun Han also came back at this time. He stood up and handed his final report to Zhang Hong. "How's the situation in Hangzhou?" Sun Han shook her head and said, "There's no problem. The killer bees are completely destroyed. There are only a few cats and dogs left. The Yohao group should be able to deal with them before the new year." "That's good." Guan Shan smiled. The killer bees had been entrenched in Hangzhou. Whether it was for the espers or the ordinary people, they were like a ticking time bomb. In this way, the dust had settled. However, in his vague perception, Drone 1, who was still alive, was still a thorn in his side. He didn't know if he would make a comeback. However, the queen bee was already gone. It was impossible for Drone 1 to create a large number of espers, at least for a short period of time. After Guan Shan expressed his thoughts, Sun Han rejected him. She shook her head and said, "No, there's still the biggest problem, and it has to do with you." Guan Shan's relaxed smile suddenly froze. What's the problem?" Sun Han said seriously. "The mole that Lily confessed has not been found yet. The killer bees destroyed all the information in the base. Almost all the clues are gone. The only useful information left is that the killer bees are involved in a gene trafficking channel, and the mole helped cover it up. The Sacre-Cœur hospital you found out is related to this channel, so the higher-ups hope that you can investigate this matter with Li. I'm only responsible for conveying the message so that you can prepare early. As for the specific situation, you can communicate with Xia Lei when you return to Hangzhou. It was actually a direct order from the higher-ups. Guanshan was depressed, but he couldn't refuse. He thought for a moment and asked, "Is there a time limit for this mission?" Sun Han, of course, saw Guanshan's hesitation. She shook her head and said, "There's no hurry. The central government also needs to dispatch manpower to assist you. At least you can rest well for a month." Guanshan breathed a sigh of relief and smiled. "Thank you, Captain Sunday," he thought to himself. "Whether I can rest or not depends on the mood of the simulator." "You're welcome." Sun Han also breathed a sigh of relief. He really didn't know whether Noon would be dismantled if this guy stayed any longer. A few days later, Guanshan, Shuman Lin, Baiakuya, and the father and daughter of the Liu family returned to Hangzhou. The disabled victims of Baihe village also left with them. When they arrived in Hangzhou, they would first be placed in a temporary residence specially arranged for the victims of supernatural incidents in the Tin Formation. After that, Guanshan and Shuman Lin discussed and decided to build a shelter at their own expense. They would slowly help them find their loved ones. It would be best if they could find them, but if they couldn't, or if something else happened, they could also temporarily stay there. Those with good hands and feet could take care of those with severe disabilities. They could also do some manual work and open an online shop. Of course, most of this was Shuman Lin's suggestion, and she almost took care of all the expenses except for the construction of the shelter. As a supernatural person who had been in the Tin Formation for 10 years, Shuman Lin was obviously richer than Guanshan. Guanshan felt that there must be a deeper reason for Shuman Lin to be so dedicated, but seeing that she was quite happy, he didn't ask more. After the plane landed, the father and daughter of the Liu family could leave after signing the confidentiality agreement. However, Liu Qiuqiu hesitated for a while. She stepped forward and whispered to Guanshan, "You really don't remember my father?" Guanshan was stunned and frowned. "You seem to be a little strange from the moment you entered the room and saw your father." Guanshan went straight to the point. "Dr. Liu, what are you trying to say? Should I know your father?" Liu Qiuqiu took a deep breath and looked at him. "What if I say that you should know him?" Guanshan was even more puzzled. "What do you mean?" Liu Qiuqiu wanted to show him the medical record, but she remembered that she had left it at home. She could only say, "Can we meet in 3 days? I have something very important to show you." Guanshan had a puzzled look on his face, but when faced with Liu Qiuqiu's sincere gaze, he still nodded. He had a good impression of Liu Qiuqiu and didn't think that this doctor had ulterior motives. If it was really important, then there was no harm in seeing it. Liu Qiuqiu thanked him and left with Lu Mingyi. Baiakuya also said goodbye to Guanshan, saying that he would try his best to track down the clues of the half-statue in Venom's hands. Xia Lei and the others hadn't come back yet, and Guanshan didn't want to stay in the base any longer. He applied for a new mobile phone from the logistics department and was soon ready to return home with excitement. Guanshan walked out of the base, and the first thing he did was to pick up his mobile phone and call Shindinghua. When the phone rang, Guanshan felt a chill in his hair. He looked up and found that it was snowing. It was the first snow of the year in Hangzhou. Chapter 184. Shaoshan. After the call was connected, the girl's familiar voice came from the other end. "You're finally done with your business trip?" Guanshan was stunned. "My phone is broken. I'm using a new phone number. I haven't even said anything yet." "How can you guess that?" "Intuition. Tell me the truth. Can you dismantle the surveillance camera?" "No. Watching Guanshan's every move every day is the perverted Shun Dinghua's pleasure." He. Little comrade Shen laughed arrogantly. "You should still be at work now. It's not good to be in public." "No way. I'm not someone who works overtime until midnight." Recently, President Li has gone on business trips, so there are fewer things to do. Now everyone gets off work on time. There are not many people in the office. It's not a public place. "Okay." Guanshan shrugged helplessly and stopped joking. "I'm back." "Okay." Shin Dinghua suddenly slowed down her tone and said softly, welcome back. I'll go to the newspaper office to pick you up. Well, I want 2 ice creams from M&M. It's snowing. It's not good to eat ice cream in such cold weather. Huh. Okay, very good, very good. I'll go buy it now. Guanshan expressed that his principle was flexible and flexible. Anyway, even if Shun Dinghua was fat like a little fat cat, she was still a cute little fat cat that was fattened up by him. Then I'll wait for you at the door downstairs. Shun Dinghua said casually. Speaking of which, have you seen President Li? When will she come back? Guanshan lowered his head to look at the pendant around his neck. The queen bee was still in coma. Yes, I did, but there was a small problem. It will probably take some time for her to come back. Shun Dinghua said, oh, and asked again, is the matter with Officer Xiao over? Guanshan said, yes, it's over. There shouldn't be any accidents that need my help in the short term. That's good, but Shun Dinghua said seriously, Xiaoshan still needs to learn more life skills. If he panicked when he met a cockroach, what would he do if I wasn't there? Wouldn't he have no choice but to surrender? Then I'd better not learn it. Guanshan raised his eyebrows and smiled. If that's the case, I'll always need Comrade Shin's guidance. Shun Dinghua asked cautiously, you don't need it after learning it? Here it comes, the question of death. Guanshan's smile did not change. After so many trials, he was no longer the same as before. He immediately found the standard answer. I might not need Comrade Shin's guidance after learning it, but I still need Comrade Shun. Shun Dinghua couldn't believe it. Impossible. My Xiaoshan can't answer so fluently. Who are you? Guanshan was very cooperative. Oh, now that you've found out, your Xiaoshan is in my hands. Tell me, how much are you willing to pay in exchange for him? Shun Dinghua said seriously, 2 ice creams. Are the upper and lower sections still connected? Guanshan and Shun Dinghua joked for a while before reluctantly hanging up the phone. He went to buy 2 ice creams and brought them to the entrance of the newspaper building. From afar, he saw Shun Dinghua, who had changed into a knitted sweater and a woolen jacket. Although she was wearing thick clothes, she didn't look bloated. On the contrary, she looked very cute. Her half-length black hair was separated into 2 braids and tied into a bundle behind her head. With a bow hairpin, she looked more intellectual. The girl was wearing a dark red pleated skirt under the sweater. Her legs were slender and straight with black silk wrapped around them. Her small leather shoes were exquisite and elegant. Standing quietly in the light snow, there was a kind of coldness that stood aloof from the world. Guanshan discovered that, in fact, Shun Dinghua's temperament was cold, but not as cold as Gao Ye's. If she didn't make any other expressions, she was like a narcissus by the lake, reserved and alienated. But when Guanshan came closer, this narcissus showed her loveliness. Xiaoshan. Shun Dinghua's eyes lit up. She waved her hand, but felt cold, so she shrank back into her sleeves. She jumped 2 steps toward Guanshan and threw herself into his arms. She rubbed her face hard, looked up at him, and muttered, "Why are you wearing so little? It's snowing." Guanshan didn't pay attention to how much he was wearing. He only put on a jacket, and it seemed to be a short-sleeved shirt inside. When Shun Dinghua said that, he felt that something was wrong. But now, his threshold of tolerance for cold and heat was much higher. Now, the temperature below 0 was just a little cold for him. Guanshan could only say perfunctorily, "It's okay. I'm not stupid. If it's cold, I'll definitely wear more. Recently, my body has been running around a lot, so I'm not afraid of the cold." Shun Dinghua opened her arms and reached out to hug Guanshan, rubbing hard. "You're stupid. Even if you're afraid, you still have to say that you're not afraid." Guanshan didn't refute. He squatted down slightly and touched Shun Dinghua's head with his chin. He also hugged her with his arms and said with a smile, "It's warm now." Shun Dinghua snorted. "It's my credit." Yes. Guanshan asked, "Do you still want to eat the ice cream? It's going to melt if you don't eat it." Shun Dinghua immediately raised her head and said firmly, "Eat it." On the way home, Guanshan looked at Shun Dinghua, who was holding an ice cream cone in each hand. He sighed in his heart that girls were really magical creatures. They were not afraid of the cold even more than him. Shun Dinghua said righteously, "Eating ice cream in winter is like sleeping in an air-conditioned room in summer. It's a happy thing." Well, Guanshan couldn't deny that it was indeed very happy. After waiting for the bus, Shen Dinghua licked a mouthful of ice cream. She turned her head to look at Guanshan and said regretfully, I originally wanted to give you one, but seeing that you're so cold, I can only eat it myself. So she bought two because of this. But they were both bought by me. What kind of childish behavior is she to give me? Guanshan felt a little funny and said, It's okay. Aren't these two ice creams redeeming me? But you, be careful not to have a stomachache. I'm not afraid now. Shen Dinghua licked another mouthful of ice cream. I hope you're really not afraid. Guanshan patted her head and looked at the fork in the road ahead. Okay, let's go home. And Uncle and Auntie shouldn't be at home, right? He carefully glanced at the villa. He still had a lingering fear of suddenly bumping into Father and Mother Shen last time. Shen Dinghua looked at him and said, Of course, they're not at home. Guanshan looked at her. She also looked at Guanshan. Shen Dinghua said something surprising. Come to my house tonight? Cough, cough. Guanshan almost choked on his own saliva. He said in annoyance, Are you trying to trick me again? Shen Dinghua said innocently. How can that be? They're really not at home. If you don't believe me, I can prove it to you. Suddenly, Shen Dinghua's eyes flashed with a hint of slyness. She reached out and hugged Guanshan's neck. She stood on tiptoe and shared the ice cream with him. The sweet and cool taste spread in his mouth. Guanshan subconsciously chased after that trace of sweetness. But soon it slipped away, leaving a strong restlessness in his heart. Chapter 185. Looking at Shen Dinghua leaving briskly, Guanshan wished he could use his courage to face the boss and tie her up and bring her home. However, fighting a boss in the simulation environment was different from doing something that exceeded one's limits in real life. The courage required was also different. Guanshan had no choice but to restrain himself and return home. Fortunately, the weather was cold enough to calm his brain down. Guanshan went into his bedroom and turned on the computer. He told the others that he had changed his phone number and then played a few games to relax. Although he hadn't slept for nearly a week, he was still in high spirits. Especially after leveling up and refreshing his status, he was full of energy. But this couldn't eliminate the fatigue in his heart. Running back and forth, opening dungeons, and concentrating on fighting were all very tiring. Normal people would die after playing games for 7 days. Not to mention that Guanshan basically didn't eat or drink, as if there was no limit at all. Guanshan now felt that he was becoming less and less like a human. He didn't know what he would become after leveling up. He wondered if he could achieve perpetual motion if he was always in the simulation state and relied on killing monsters to level up. Compared to Guanshan's and the superpowered people's problems, changing his phone number was just a small interlude. It's still fun to torture noobs. Guanshan looked at the game interface on the screen, and his face was as lonely as snow. Killing the swindler of the Gue E sect or the leader of the Killer Bee was not as satisfying as torturing noobs in the game. A horror game, unless you had a rocket launcher in your hand, was still a horror game. No, even if you had a rocket launcher, it was still a horror game if you couldn't beat them. The cold, flat chest Snow below, who persistently wanted to be his disciple, was still chattering. He turned off the voice chat and sent a private message. Cold, flat chest Snow below. Boss, are you there? Cold, flat chest Snow below. Boss, are you still in Hangzhou? I recently came to Hangzhou to play. Do you have a free meal with me? It's my treat. Guanshan really didn't know what to do with this kind of player. However, this person had played dozens of games with him. Other than being talkative and impulsive, there wasn't anything wrong with him. It would be better to say that this person was like a keyboard warrior who let loose on the internet. It was just that he didn't hide himself at all. Guanshan didn't need to go to work yet. He had been on leave until the end of December, so he didn't have much to do for the next few days. As for the filing of the so-called Drone 1 incident, it was not as troublesome as it was in the Meridian base. He only needed to submit a detailed report to Xiaolei. After all, this was his family's territory. With his parents around, of course, he could bend the rules. Furthermore, he had to figure out President Li's situation. At the very least, he had to let the Queen Bee release Li Jiying's projection. Then, he had to indirectly ask if the Taiyan formation could put a person like Li Jing back into a human body. However, according to what the Queen Bee said, the possibility was very low. After all, President Li's body had already been destroyed in the swamp. However, he didn't want to reveal the fact that the Queen Bee was in his hands to the Taiyan formation. The importance of this spiritual creature was self-evident. If some people with ulterior motives found out, they might take the Queen Bee away for experiments. Now that Li Jing and the Queen Bee were a community, he couldn't let the Taiyan formation decide the fate of the president. Even if the Yohao group seemed to be good people, because of the base number, Guanshan had already seen the mixed up of the good and the bad in other teams. For example, Qi Xingyu, who used her ability to charm others as soon as she came up. Among the psychics, even the members of the Taiyan formation, there were a large number of them who didn't know their place. Having a psychic ability meant that they were out of the norm. They were walking on the edge of the rules. For a spiritual creature like the Queen Bee, which was enough to be treated like a treasure by a level of psychic, Guanshan didn't dare to gamble with humanity. Therefore, he could only rely on himself. Well, there was also Baikia, a guy with an excessive sense of justice, who could also be used. Guanshan was in a daze, only to find that while he was thinking, tall, cold, flat chest snow was almost flooding the screen, and he was still constantly sending messages. Guanshan didn't know whether to laugh or cry. If he ignored this guy, he estimated that he would be flooded every day during his time in Hangzhou. However, it wouldn't be to the extent of deleting friends. This person was still a qualified teammate. Anyway, it was just a meeting. According to the current strength of Guanshan, he could only kidnap others in a meeting, unless the other party was also a psychic. But how could it be possible for this noob who is so bad at playing games to scratch his feet? Guanshan shook his head, recalled the scene of this person being suppressed by him, and dispelled his concerns. Green Mountain beyond the mountains. Okay, when? Where do we meet? Tall, cold, flat chest snow. Tomorrow, 11 o'clock, SG Hotel. Is that okay? Guanshan Baidu the price of the hotel restaurant and couldn't help but gasp. It seemed that another person who didn't lack money. Alas, there were so many rich people in the world. Why couldn't it be his turn? Guanshan was depressed. If it weren't for the fact that he had no money, how could he have entered the 30-yuan buffet restaurant? How could he have met Zhao Hong and his wife? And how could he have triggered the simulator? Well, in that case, maybe you should be grateful that he didn't have money. Green Mountain beyond the mountains. Doesn't this hotel need to be booked? Is there enough time? Tall, cold, flat chest snow. It's okay, I can cut in line. Well, Guanshan didn't understand the world of the rich. It was poverty that limited his imagination. Since the other party said so, Guanshan, of course, could only reluctantly agree. Green Mountain beyond the mountains. Okay. Tall, cold, flat chest snow. Ooh, big brother, I'm here. Then there was a series of incomprehensible otaku jargon. Guanshan was used to this person's sudden enthusiasm and calmly replied. Then it's settled. Then he cleared the accumulated messages in his QQ and directly turned off his computer. Most of the messages in his QQ were from colleagues and classmates. In the end, it was, why did you change your phone number? When will the president be back? When will you come to work? If you're not around, Jiang Fei will cause trouble again. We can't take it anymore. Please save us, Dragon King. The last message was obviously from Lu Rue, the gossip expert. He was probably spreading the rumor that Guanshan was the Dragon King. Green Mountain beyond the mountains. Don't look for me. I'm not the Dragon King. Lu Rue, no. Speaking of which, are you really going to take leave until the end of the month? I heard that there's a big figure in the literary world coming tomorrow. President Li won't be around, and Jiang Xian will be in charge of receiving him. It's going to be a big event, and we'll be the ones who will be troubled. Green Mountain beyond the mountains. Isn't it your mission to be lazy? Of course, I'm going to find out everything. You're on your own. As for the other messages, Guanshan replied to all of them in a businesslike manner before contacting Shuman Lin. Shuman Lin had already gone to arrange for the shelter. She was very concerned about this matter and was very efficient. She had already found the address. It was said that the shelter used to be an orphanage, but it was about to close down. They hoped that they could invest in it and turn it into a shelter for the disabled while keeping the orphanage. Guanshan did not have any objections to this, but Shuman Lin said that the person in charge wanted to meet with them as soon as possible. Guanshan pondered for a moment. He looked at the sky and realized that it was not too late. Then let's meet face to face. Can we meet now? Shuman Lin quickly replied. They said yes. Chapter 186. Beiqing sat nervously in the coffee shop, and opposite her was Shuman Lin. While sipping her coffee, she carefully sized up the girl who looked much younger than her. Beiqing really didn't expect that the person who could casually take out $300,000 to rebuild the entire orphanage would be a young woman in her 20s. But it seemed that the other party wasn't the real owner. Then, could it be that she was a rich second-generation heir who had nowhere to spend her money? Or was there a problem with the background of the disabled people who needed to be resettled? Beiqing's heart was full of uneasiness. She couldn't be blamed for being so suspicious, but her orphanage that was about to close down didn't have any value at all. She was desperate and didn't expect to succeed even when she offered those conditions. It was nothing more than asking for a sky-high price and asking for money on the spot. She just wanted to give herself more room to bargain. Who knew that the other party would agree? So, she immediately suspected that the other party was a swindler and wanted to meet them offline to confirm. Beiqing secretly glanced at the man sitting at the table next to her. The latter looked at her and made an okay gesture with his hand. She was worried, so she asked for help. Moreover, this coffee shop was opened by someone she knew. If she found anything wrong, she would directly send him to the police. Shuman Lin usually didn't look very reliable, but after all, she had been a spy and insider for so many years. Her psychological quality was unquestionable, and she was more than enough to deal with ordinary people. At this moment, she was neatly dressed in a professional suit with a high ponytail. She looked like a secretary with a good temperament. Shuman Lin put down her phone, covered her mouth, and coughed twice. She said, "Ms. Bei, Mr. Guan will be here soon. Before that, I want to confirm the relevant situation of Fushin Orphanage. Is that okay?" Beiqing naturally nodded. "Ask away. I'll definitely tell you everything I know. The premise is that you're really sincere." Shuman Lin said, "Fushin Orphanage has been in operation for a total of 16 years. The first 15 years were managed by Mr. Bedexin. A year ago, he passed away and the management rights of the orphanage were transferred. Ms. Bedexin, who was born in this orphanage, has taken over for less than a year. Because of poor management and the loss of the source of funds, you are planning to sell it, right?" Beiqing was stunned and looked a little embarrassed. She didn't expect the other party to investigate in such detail. "That's right, but a charity has already contacted me and is willing to provide funds." Shuman Lin did not comment. She just smiled and said, "But the other party wants to be fully responsible for the future planning of the orphanage. Their nature is different from ours." Beiqing was speechless, and her heart couldn't help but jerk. How does he even know this? That charity organization had only contacted them less than 2 days ago. Shuman Lin continued, "Madam Baker, as a child of the orphanage, I believe that you know how much Mr. Bedminster values the orphanage and how much effort he has put into it." Beiqing finally couldn't help but stare at Shuman Lin. "You want to use this to threaten me?" "No." Shuman Lin shook her head and said, "I just want to say that since he values the orphanage so much, and you know that Mr. Bedminster is a great calligrapher, he doesn't lack money and has a lot of assets under his name, but why didn't he leave anything to the orphanage in his will?" Beiqing had never thought that this question would be raised by an unrelated person. Her aggressive attitude had weakened by 30% due to her astonishment. She stammered, "This orphanage is just a temporary act of kindness by Mr. Bedminster. He has no obligation to leave anything to the orphanage." Although she tried her best to hide it, Beiqing still couldn't hide the disappointment on her face. Lin Shuman immediately denied Beiqing's idea. She shook her head and said, "You're wrong. He did leave something behind. He donated 1/3 of his assets to the orphanage, but the will was tampered with by someone." The man sitting next to her suddenly stood up and said angrily, "Don't talk nonsense. How could Mr. Bedminster's family do such a thing? What's more, his son is Bei Guangji." Although Beiqing was shocked by the man who suddenly stood up and quickly signaled him to calm down with her eyes. She agreed with him in her heart. Yes, that's right. He is the editor-in-chief of an education magazine. He is the one who advocates for charity and education. How could he do such a thing? The man who stood up was the person she found to help calm the situation. He was also Yin Tai, who was from the orphanage. The other guests were his buddies. I only mentioned some people and didn't mention any names. Don't be so quick to assume. Schumann Lin smiled slightly. As for whether he did it or not, I'm afraid it will depend on evidence. When Yin Tai heard the word evidence, his eyes immediately flickered. He walked over and slammed the table. What evidence? Say it clearly, or I will sue you for slander. Bei Qing was shocked. She didn't expect Yin Tai to have such a big reaction. She wanted to stop him, but just as she stood up, she noticed that the surrounding guests were also surrounding them. She immediately realized something. Her pupils contracted and she quickly said, Yin Tai, what do you want to do? Yin Tai snorted coldly. Mr. Bedminster's life's work. How can he sell it just like that and let an outsider get involved? I think Sister Bei is confused. As for this woman of unknown origin, she is talking nonsense. Of course, we have to chase this kind of person with bad intentions out. Hey, Yin Tai, you don't have to. How can you? The situation was different from what they had agreed on. Bei Qing suddenly panicked and stood up to stop him. Yin Tai was tall and strong. He flung Bei Qing aside and reached out to grab Schumann Lin. Schumann Lin's expression didn't change. She seemed to be sitting calmly, but in fact, she was already panicking. She thought that there was only one person. She didn't expect that the entire cafe's customers were the people opposite her. It wasn't until she saw a figure step into the cafe that her eyes lit up and she immediately relaxed. Guanshan arrived at the agreed location. He looked at the cafe's signboard to make sure that he didn't go to the wrong place. He muttered in his heart that it was really remote before he walked in. But as soon as he stepped in, he felt that the atmosphere wasn't right. The cafe, which was supposed to be quiet, was a little noisy. All the customers were standing and gathering in a certain direction. Schumann Lin's voice sounded in his earpiece without any backbone. Guanshan, help! Guanshan didn't even think about it. He subconsciously took out his Glock 17 and opened the safety. Gotcha! It was full of texture. In the cafe that was full of voices, it was so different and eye-catching. Everyone's gaze shifted towards the source of the voice, and when they saw the black and intimidating weapon, all of their expressions changed drastically. In this society ruled by law, the impact of suddenly seeing a real gun was self-evident. Some people even directly raised their hands. Their faces were pale and their legs were trembling. They looked like they were going to die in the next second. Yin Tai, who was the leader, was also dumbfounded. He swallowed his saliva. He didn't want to make such a big fuss. Conditioned reflex. He forgot that this wasn't a simulation. Guanshan's mouth twitched in his heart. He felt that he only had two choices now. One was to be a robber, and the other was to be a police officer. So he took the opportunity to raise the gun and put on a serious face. This is a robbery. Don't move. PS1. Thank you like bamboo. And air strategy begging for leeches. Electromagnetic ghost. Those are memories. HYH125 Kefilin. You meow. Clown who wants to go to heaven. I can't talk anymore. Edros. Epidemic void. Good names are gone. Hogwarts magical young man. Passerby night. A tip with a name. PS2 robbery. Hand over the ticket. Reaching out his hand. Chapter 187. Let me take a look. What did you bring? A cell phone for each of you. 500 yuan in cash. Less than 10,000 yuan. TSK. Baseball bats, brass knuckles, butterfly knives. Are they cosplaying as gangsters? Not only that, they even have sharp knives. Does this count as a controlled knife? Robber Guanshan did his job diligently. He really did search all the items on these people and even began to take inventory of them. He narrowed his eyes and looked at the dagger in his hand. The dagger was relatively short, but it had a sharp edge and a blood groove. At least, it didn't look like a fruit knife. Bro, you're holding a controlled gun. Why are you arguing with our small knives? Everyone hugged their heads and squatted down, complaining in their hearts. Yin Tai smiled. We won't use it. We're just using it to scare people. We're all, law-abiding citizens, crack. Guan Shan broke the dagger with his hand and threw on the ground. He clapped his hands. Law-abiding. Everyone was dumbfounded. Their faces were full of shock. F***CK. That was a genuine alloy dagger, not a piece of candy. Why did it break just like that? Was the dagger they bought fake, or was the guy in front of them not human at all? Yintai's expression was confused. He swore that the man in front of him, who was only a meter away from him, didn't show any signs of exerting force when he broke the dagger. Moreover, this person's figure could even be called thin and weak compared to the few of them who had trained. Therefore, when they saw Guan Shan put away his gun, they exchanged glances and decided to find a chance to counterattack. As a result, the originally restless thoughts of counterattacking had been completely extinguished. Counterattack? Wouldn't they be like the dagger and break into two pieces later? Fear. JPG Yentai swallowed and took half a step back. Not law-abiding, not law-abiding. But this has nothing to do with us. We're just doing things for money. Bei Qing, who was beside him, knew that something was wrong. She questioned, Yentai, whose money did you take? If she still didn't feel that there was a problem, then there must be something wrong with her brain. Originally, it was just a business negotiation. Looking for Yentai and the others was just to prevent them from encountering swindlers. But before they could make things clear, not only did these people come up to chase them away, they even brought weapons. It was obvious that they were here to mess things up. The purpose of the disturbance seemed to be to prevent her from selling the orphanage. Bei Qing's heart suddenly skipped a beat. Combined with what Shuman Lin had just said, the only person who could be suspected of instructing Yentai was old Mr. Bei's son, Bei Guangji. Could it be that the will had really been changed? Yentai stammered and suddenly changed his words. No, I was just talking nonsense. I don't want you to sell the orphanage as a commodity, so I brought people here. He looked at Bei Qing and Shuman Lin, who were still standing. He was puzzled. Why didn't the robbers tie up these two women and let them swagger and talk? Could it be some kind of romantic interest? Guan Shan took out his gun again. Yentai was instantly terrified. At least he didn't want to be the scapegoat before he died. Okay, it's Bei Guangji. Bei Qing was in disbelief. It's really him. Why did the will really have been changed? Yentai mumbled, I don't know. He only asked me to mess things up and stop you from selling the orphanage. At least until January. Shuman Lin nodded. That's right. In January, the suburbs of the old city will be redeveloped. The orphanage happens to be in a better location. If we can get the orphanage from you, we can sell it for millions or even tens of millions. Bei Qing was at a loss. But looking at Yintai's expression, she knew that Bei Guangji had probably mentioned this to him before. It was most likely true. Guan Shan caught the main point. So, in other words, he is snatching from us. Everyone was stunned. They also caught the main point. Who was a robber? Who was we? Shuman Lin nodded. Yes, so we have to deal with Bei Guangji first. I have already checked all the information. As long as we get the evidence, it will be enough to send him to jail. His crimes are not limited to just changing the will. The crowd was once again thrown into chaos by the wind. Yentai was shocked. Wait, you two? Bei Qing also looked at the two of them with a blank face. Guan Shan walked over and reached out his hand to Bei Qing. He smiled and introduced himself. Nice to meet you. I'm Guan Shan. I'm a person who wants to talk to you about investing in the orphanage. Bei Qing. Indeed, when Bei Qing looked at him again, she realized that the man in front of her was gentlemanly and handsome. His manners were decent, and his smile was gentle and polite. At first glance, he had the demeanor of a radio host. If she forgot how this person took out his gun and broke the dagger with his bare hands. Bei Qing stuttered. That gun just now? Guan Shan's expression didn't change. Sorry, it's just a toy. I saw that the situation wasn't quite right, so I was scared. I just happened to bring a toy gun, so I came up with an idea to help you out. You're welcome. Just happened. Who would bring a toy gun when they go out? Do you think we're fools? Who was more scared at that time? Don't lie through your teeth. Yentai and the others looked like they were about to die. They didn't dare to refute at all. Bei Qing didn't dare to either. She could only smile awkwardly and politely. She shook Guan Shan's hand to show her friendliness. I'm the current director of the orphanage, Beijing. Nice to meet you. Nice to meet you, Guan Shan said. Then we can continue to talk about business. He turned to Shuman Lin and said, by the way, remember to clear the surveillance cameras. There's one at the front and one at the side of the cafe. Shuman Lin nodded. The logistics department is already clearing them. Beijing maintained her smile, but her heart almost stopped. Your gang, no, your team, is really professional. Yin Tai and the others were trembling. In comparison, what they were doing was just child's play. It could be said that they were provoking the tyrant. They didn't care about their lives anymore. Little did they know that Guan Shan was also complaining in his heart. Why is the logistics team so skilled? He hasn't even said anything, and they've already started to deal with the aftermath. How many times have you done this? The conversation after that went very smoothly. Because the orphanage had become secondary, Beijing was more concerned about Bei Guangji and the will. Shuman Lin naturally investigated clearly through some channels. Bei Guangji had bribed the lawyer to change the will, but the lawyer had bad intentions. In fact, he had kept a copy for himself to threaten Bei Guangji in the future. So now, we just need to find that lawyer. Leave these matters to us. As for the orphanage, Guan Shan looked at Beijing, and the latter quickly said, no problem. You've helped me so much. The price I offered before was actually not very generous. You can decide. As far as I'm concerned, as long as the orphanage can continue operating, it's fine. Guan Shan smiled. That's not necessary. We'll definitely give you a suitable price. As for Yin Tai and the others, they would naturally be left to the logistics team to deal with. After Guan Shan walked out, he couldn't help but ask Shuman Lin, you did it on purpose, right? You found such an obviously problematic person to force us to repay your kindness? What Beijing said was 30% false and 70% true. Although she didn't have any ill intentions before, she definitely had plans to extort money from the spendthrifts. Now that Bei Guangji was a more threatening target, she gave in to them. He didn't realize before that this little invisible person was actually quite scheming. Shuman Lin pretended to look at the scenery. It's just a coincidence. Chapter 188. After reading all the detailed information given by Shuman Lin, Guan Shan couldn't help but sigh. There was really no comparison between ordinary people and superpowered people. Although the Taiyan formation was a bit overwhelmed in most of the cases involving superpowered criminals. However, without the involvement of superpowered people, ordinary people had no secrets to the Taiyan formation. For example, if Guan Shan hadn't been involved in the Fushin orphanage incident, then Beijing would have been in a mess. She would have been stopped by the people she had hired to help her on the grounds of feelings. Her funds would have been ruined, and it would have been natural for her to sell the orphanage to the old principal's son at a low price. Perhaps in the end, she wouldn't have known what had happened behind the scenes. The orphanage would have been rebuilt and ceased to exist. The children would have been sent to other welfare organizations, while the others would have made a lot of money. But now, with the intervention of the Tin Formation, the truth was clear at a glance. Guan Shan couldn't help but remember that in his own file, it was mentioned that the Tin Formation had intervened in the conflict between him and Jiang Sai in the morning after the restaurant incident. Xiao Lei had allowed him to look at the file, which meant that he had really accepted him as one of his own, so he didn't hide it from him. Guan Shan also expressed his understanding. After all, when he carefully thought about his own behavior at the time, he also felt scared. If they didn't test it, the Taiyan Formation wouldn't be a proper organization. But this also showed that for superpowered people, ordinary people like Jiang Xian were just tools, no matter how much money and power they had. They didn't even need to inform you when they were used, and they didn't need to inform you when they were finished. This was also the difference between the Taiyan Formation and other official organizations. Because the people who made the rules for superpowered people were also superpowered people. No wonder there were very few real restrictions on superpowered people. There was only one psychological red line that couldn't be crossed, otherwise it could be cleared. In essence, choosing to enter the world of superpowered people was tantamount to breaking away from the rules of ordinary people, which caused their moral values to become weaker and weaker. Guan Shan had been dealing with superpowered people all this time. Under normal circumstances, he wouldn't let the two sides interact. Now that he had seen how superpowered people dealt with ordinary people, he realized how big the gap between them was. If this goes on, I will gradually be assimilated. Guan Shan sighed. When he faced with Yin Tai and the others, he had already realized the change in his mentality. He changed even faster than the average paranormal, because his daily life was very boring except for his interactions with Shindinghua. He didn't have any family or friends. He originally lacked the rope to maintain his daily life. After he had obtained the simulator and met with superpowered people with superpowers abilities, he had inevitably been completely occupied by the abnormality. So at the very least, you should still keep your job at the news agency. Of course, the most important thing is comrade Shun. Guan Shan felt that as long as he had Shun Liangchuan, he could definitely still be a normal person. The logistics team has already taken control of that lawyer. This lawyer is not a good person either. He has given many ideas, given false testimony, and defended many scumbags. With this as a threat, he should soon betray us. Anyway, to these people, no matter how big the world is, their lives are the most important. As long as the will is in our hands, the 7 works preserved by Bedexin will belong to the orphanage and can be used for a charity auction. Not only will the orphanage's funding problem be solved, but we can also use Bedexin's fame to promote the orphanage. He had been silently running the orphanage when he was alive. I didn't expect that he would be willing to use his works and fame to promote the orphanage in the will. No wonder Bei Guangji wanted to leave a will. If this is released, the orphanage will be linked to Bedexin's name. If he wants to do something, he will be in trouble. Shuman Lin's long-winded voice pulled Guan Shan back from his thoughts. He muttered, "It's not enough to amend the will and protect the orphanage. Go and investigate that Bei Guangji. Since he's so skilled at it now, he might have more dirt on him than the lawyer." Guan Shan said, "It just so happens that the news agency's official account hasn't found any big news for almost a month." Shuman Lin was stunned. Looking at Guan Shan's serious expression, she suddenly remembered that the man in front of her was first and foremost a reporter. And part of a reporter's job was to present the truth to the world. This Bei Guangji could be said to have bumped right into the muzzle of the gun. Guan Shan narrowed his eyes. He even wants to do this to the charity orphanage that his father is supporting. It can be seen how narrow-minded this person is. Instead of waiting for him to react and find a way to take revenge, it's better to take the first step and deprive him of the right to take revenge once and for all. He turned his head to look at Shuman Lin. "Isn't that right?" Well, now it's the side of the psychic again. However, Shuman Lin still nodded in agreement. There is really no need to continue to give an ordinary person a chance to entangle. I'll ask the logistics to investigate. Guan Shan suddenly said, "By the way, what about the 3 logistics men? I haven't seen them since I came back." Shuman Lin's mouth twitched. The 3 of them quit their jobs and went to work in Byakuya's detective agency. Guan Shan, it was actually expected. Well, after experiencing a life and death crisis in the room last time, the 3 logistics men and Byakuya could be said to be sympathetic to each other. It was a good story to tell. When Guan Shan returned home, Shuman Lin happened to send the information over. Guan Shan glanced at it roughly and saw that it was full of misdeeds. Bei Guangji, no wonder it sounds a little familiar. It turns out that not only is he the editor-in-chief of a magazine, but he is also a well-known contemporary writer. Well, after all, he is the son of an old calligrapher. It's normal. Guan Shan turned a page. TSK, but his character is not good. The position of the published works can be bought with money, and the candidates for the competitions can also be selected. Maliciously suppressing peers, buying a water army to smear others' reputation, quite comprehensive. His whole person has fallen into the eyes of money, right? Oh no, it's okay to sleep in the same bed. He's a married man. That's not manly. The so-called donation is also a fake donation. The funding to build Hope Elementary School is even more pretentious. In a few years, he flattened the building and built a house. He also indirectly controls a real estate company. Isn't this the company that is engaged in development? No wonder. It turns out that he is making money for himself and evading taxes. Guanshan read page by page and clicked his tongue in wonder. In general, this person did not do anything outrageous, murder, or arson, but he was definitely not a good person. There were also the high hats of philanthropist and educator that the media put on him. It could be said that his virtue did not match his position. A typical example of fraud. As long as these are exposed, his status and reputation will naturally collapse. Guanshan flipped to the end and felt that it was boring. When he was about to put it down, he saw the last line that said, "Tomorrow, he is expected to go to Hangzhou Evening News. Deputy Editor-in-Chief Jiang Xian will host a reception at SG Hotel." Hangzhou Evening News, SG Hotel. Chapter 189. Guanshan did not expect that even if he did not make this trip, there was a high probability that he would meet Bei Guangji the next day. However, this wasn't a coincidence. After all, there were only a few famous and expensive restaurants in Hangzhou. With Jiang Xian's personality, now that President Li wasn't here, he was in charge. He definitely wanted to show off his ability. Then, the problem was that Jiang Xian didn't understand business at all. Things like interviews must be arranged by his subordinates. Then, where else could he show off his ability? Of course, it was to find the best and most expensive restaurant and strive to make it as grand as possible. From a certain point of view, Jiang Xian's thoughts are really easy to see through. Guanshan's mouth twitched. Therefore, it was natural to choose SG Hotel. This hotel was not only grand, but it was also the closest to the news agency. The only coincidence was that Bei Guangji actually came to visit the Hangzhou Evening News. However, Guanshan thought about it carefully and felt that it was reasonable. The Hangzhou Evening News had recently become famous because of the events that he reported. It stood out among the few local news agencies. As a famous educator and philanthropist, Bei Guangji naturally wouldn't let go of this opportunity to increase his popularity and hype himself up. After all, for him, the more famous he was, the more beneficial it was for him to make money. Therefore, this seemingly coincidental thing was actually the result of various factors, including Guanshan himself. However, since Guanshan knew about it, he had to deal with this person before Jiang Xian arranged an interview with Bei Guangji. He didn't want the Hangzhou Evening News to become a traitorous media that sang praises and then stripped clean of their underwear. There was no time like the present. He would let the logistics department do it tomorrow. Unfortunately, the opportunity that Jiang Xian wanted to showcase himself was probably not going to happen. Guanshan smiled and said, "CEO Jiang, I don't know if birds of a feather flock together. Although you didn't do anything to offend me this time, you can't blame me for this." The next day, early in the morning, Lu Rue started to harass Guanshan on QQ. Throughout the whole process, Granny Lu entered the Grandview Garden and broadcasted what they saw and heard in the hotel. She kept saying that her life was worth it, while exclaiming about the restaurant's awesomeness in all sorts of exaggerated ways. He also asked if he was really not coming over. Of course, although his tone sounded regretful, he was actually showing off. He probably wanted to take revenge on Guanshan for saying that he would not help until he got to the bottom. Guanshan raised his eyebrows. What else could he say? Of course, he could only say that he was really envious. He regretted it and would come immediately. He was indeed about to arrive. Guanshan arrived on time. As soon as he arrived at the entrance of the restaurant, someone came up to receive him. Obviously, he had been instructed by someone. The waiter led him to the private room, where under the snow, with a cold and cold-flat chest, was. Coincidentally, on the way there, Guanshan saw the private room that Jiang Xian had arranged for him. It wasn't too far away. That's good too. I can watch the show while I'm at it. Guanshan did not intend to show up this time, and there was no need for him to do so. If not for the importance he attached to this matter, he would have given full authority to deal with the shelter to Shuman Lin. However, in order to be assured, he went to meet with Bei Qing, who had made the request. As for ordinary people like Bei Guangji, it was more than enough to leave it to the logistics team. He was a mutant who was close to becoming a B-grade mutant, and he was also Xia Lei's right-hand man. If he had to deal with ordinary people himself, wouldn't the Tan formation lose face? It felt good to have someone to rely on, Guan Shan walked into the private room. Under the snow, with a cold and cold-flat chest, was already sitting on the main seat. He waved at him and revealed an interested expression. "Hello, boss." This tone, it was obvious that he was in person. It was highly similar to what he said on the internet. Guan Shan also returned a friendly smile. He had always been very friendly to people who treated him. He sized up the other party and felt that there was nothing special about him. He looked just like a very ordinary otaku. He was wearing a black shirt and black pants. His body was well-proportioned and thin. His black hair was slightly greasy, and his looks were above average. He wore glasses, and there were obvious acne marks on his face. The most eye-catching thing was his neck. On the skin that was not covered by clothes, there was a large burn scar. Looking at the way the scar extended, it was very likely that there were scars on his back and arms as well. It must have been an accident in the past. Guan Shan hesitated for a moment about how to address the other party. After thinking about it, he decided to use a nickname. Under the snow with a cold and cold-flat chest. As soon as he said the nickname, his expression could not help but become subtle. Under the snow with a cold and cold-flat chest was actually quite happy when he heard this nickname. He laughed and said, "Yes, it's me." As long as they made eye contact, they would know that the other party was also a bosom friend. Guan Shan's mouth twitched. "It seems that you are quite proud of such a shameful nickname." Under the snow with a cold and cold-flat chest did not care. "There are many nicknames that are more shameful than mine. This is love." Guan Shan shrugged. Indeed, there were a few players who were always going against them. There was one called, "I want to be Miss Machima's dog," and another called "My Sakurajima, #1 under the heavens." They had queued up against each other several times, and both sides had been madly attacking each other. At one point, the scene was unbearable to watch. With this as a topic, Guan Shan and this netizen actually talked about their gaming experience and skills in this elegantly decorated restaurant. It seemed that although Under the Snow with a cold and cold-flat chest was willing to spend a lot of money for a netizen, he did not want to know Guan Shan's real name and identity. He just wanted to meet him and then shamelessly take the opportunity to become his disciple. His main purpose was still to play games. Guan Shan was happy to see this. If their personalities were compatible, it was actually the most relaxing thing to interact with an otaku. Excluding the fact that this guy always liked to make a fuss about becoming his disciple. Of course, since he was treating, it was not like he could not become his master. Guan Shan now had a deeper understanding of the improvement of his body. When it came to gaming, not only did he rely on his physical fitness, but he also had some skills that he discovered through his intuition. It was not difficult to teach this new disciple. At the same time, the logistics team also gave their greetings and began to move. Bei Guangji and Jiang Xian were also chatting happily in the other side of the restaurant. However, these two were purely being polite. They were more skilled at pretending to be polite than anyone else. However, compared to Bei Guangji, Jiang Xian was still slightly inferior. He was not as sanctimonious as the latter. They went back and forth, toasting each other. Of course, the wine was for their subordinates, followers, and secretaries. They were drinking tea happily in the name of health. Bei Guangji said, "Thank you for your hospitality, Chief Editor Jiang. Today's meal is very enjoyable." Jiang Xian said regretfully, "I originally wanted to book the Longting Hall next door. It's a good omen. Although it's more expensive, it's a pity that someone cut the queue first. I don't know which big shot it is." Lu Rue, who was good at fishing, had already hidden at the side. When he saw that there was no movement at the door, he could not help but send a message to Guan Shan. "Are you here yet?" I'm here. "Why don't I see you?" "I'm next door." Lu Rue was stunned. Next door? He was just about to send a message to ask why he was next door when his eyelids suddenly twitched. He wondered if the room next door was reserved by the big shot that Jiang Sai mentioned. Lu Rue originally guessed that Guan Shan might be a rich second-generation heir, but calling him the Dragon King was most likely a joke. However, at this moment, he really began to doubt his life. However, Guan Shan sent another message. "By the way, try to hold back Jiang Fei later." "Wait, stop Jiang Xian? Why'd I have to stop her? What was going to happen next?" Lu Rue had an ominous feeling. Then, he heard a bang from the door. The door of the room opened, and a group of armed men rushed in. PS1. Thank you, Ming Pian. Great old 1A. Lu Wei-Chin for your tips. PS2. Seeking monthly votes. Lao. Chapter 190. Guanshan looked at the group of armed men surrounding the room. FBI. Open the door. He could not help but twitch his mouth. He knew that the logistics team had always been brave, but he did not expect them to be this brave. When Lu Rue shivered and hid in the corner with his hands raised, he finally knew what was going to happen. But the situation was completely beyond his imagination. They were eating at a high-class restaurant and drinking wine when their water meter was suddenly checked. Who will be able to take it? Lu Rue's head was covered in cold sweat, and the other staff were not much different. They all began to ask themselves whether they had done anything they should not have done or reported any news they should not have reported, right? As for the only two leaders present, they were even more flustered. Jiang Xian was still calm, but his gaze was a little evasive. Of course, he had never done anything wrong, but he had seen these people dressed in the same way at Sacré-Cœur Hospital. Even now, Jiang Xian could still remember the scene in his dreams, especially when Guanshan beheaded a nurse in front of him. The impact was enough to wake him up every time. There were a few times when he even dreamed that he was beheaded. When he woke up, he hid under the bed and shivered for a long time before waking up. Jiang Xian was traumatized by doctors. He refused to see a psychiatrist no matter what, so he had to deal with it himself. Fortunately, Guanshan had gone on a business trip with Li Jiying. Otherwise, Jiang Xian might not even come to work. Of course, it was also because of this that Jiang Xian's temper was not very good recently. He was even more picky with his subordinates. Originally, Jiang Xian had slowly recovered over the past month and thought that the incident was over. But now, it felt like a classic reenactment. He knew that these people were from the government and were definitely not nameless. But the only person in the news agency who could be related to these people was Guanshan. So, that meant that there was a high probability that Guanshan was here too. Jiang Xian's face was pale. When he thought of this name, he felt his stomach churning, as if he was going to vomit at any moment. On the other hand, Bei Guangji didn't panic at all. He still maintained the aura of a famous writer and chief editor. He looked at the logistics team that had barged in and chuckled. Did someone commit a crime here? You can investigate as much as you want. If you catch him, we won't cover for him. The staff of a news agency were cursing in their hearts. Why the hell are you, an outsider, covering up for her? Bei Guangji's face was full of righteousness. He sold out the others without any hesitation. However, the logistics team did not move at all. They just looked at Bei Guangji like he was an idiot. Bei Guangji's heart suddenly skipped a beat as he realized something was wrong. However, he still forced himself to remain calm. Haha, aren't you going to investigate? Would you like to sit down and have a cup of tea? Jiang Xian's reaction was even faster. He immediately realized that something was wrong. These people were here for Bei Guangji. No way. My performance. Jiang Xian's brain was still not enough. Now that he saw that Bei Guangji was about to suffer, he thought to himself that Bei Guangji didn't commit any crime and he was considered an acquaintance. Could they make an exception for him? He was about to take a step forward when his hind leg was suddenly hugged by someone. Then he was caught off guard and fell to the ground. He saw stars and fainted before he could react. CEO Jiang, what happened to you? Lu Rue quickly let go and pretended that he didn't do it. He shook Jiang Xian anxiously. His forehead was sweating profusely. He really wanted to stop Jiang Xian according to Guanshan's instructions, who knew that he would directly fall to the ground. He hoped that Jiang Xian didn't see who it was just now. Otherwise, he could only change his job. Lu Rue laughed awkwardly at the logistics team and Bei Guangji who were looking at him. Then, he quickly dragged Jiang Xian away. The logistics team didn't talk nonsense. Bei Guangji, you're suspected of bribing high-ranking officials, organizing underworld gangs, and fighting. Come with us. Bei Guangji's pupil shrank. Of course, he wouldn't admit it. I didn't. Who's your superior? Where's the arrest warrant? I didn't do anything. You can't arrest me. But how could the logistics team listen to his excuses? They directly handcuffed him and took him away. Bei Guangji also knew that he couldn't make a big fuss in such a public place. After he went out, he didn't say anything. He just tried to cover his face. His expression was ugly as he thought about who to find to save him. But soon, he remembered that he was attending a reception banquet of a newspaper. Lu Rue got up from the ground and looked at the photo on his phone. His eyes lit up. Big news! The famous writer Bei Guangji actually did such a thing. At the same time, he was a little scared. If Bei Guangji wasn't caught today, they would have interviewed him directly. Wouldn't it become a stain on the Hangzhou Evening News? Fortunately, wait, no, Guanshan is also in this hotel. He even reminded me. Could it be that he arranged it? The more Lu Rue thought about it, the more likely it was. After the others chased out, he called an ambulance and waited for people to carry Jiang Xian. But he saw Guanshan coming in from the door. As soon as Guanshan came in, he saw Jiang Xian lying unconscious on the ground. He stopped in his tracks. This scene was really familiar. Yin Guilai's mouth twitched. He looked at Lu Rue with an inquiring gaze. Lu Rue shook his head and said righteously, No, it's not my fault. He fell down by himself. He definitely didn't fall down by himself. Guanshan raised his brows and pulled Lu Rue up. When he saw the photo on Lu Rue's phone, he said, Not bad. I'm not free recently, so you can help me write the official news. Lu Rue pointed at himself. He was overjoyed, but he still pretended to be surprised and refused. Me? No, I'm still a newcomer. Guanshan patted him on the shoulder. I'm in charge of the official news now. Am I not a newcomer? President Li is not Jiang Xian. Even if she comes back, she will agree. That's it. The organization has already decided. You will write it. Lu Rue immediately stopped pretending. He rubbed his hands and smiled. He asked softly, Brother Guan, were those people who came to catch Bei Guangji arranged by you? Of course, Guanshan wouldn't tell the truth. He smiled faintly. Me? No, I'm just a small reporter. How can I arrange people? Don't think too much. Lu Rue immediately understood and changed the topic. Ahem, Brother Guan, when are you coming back to work? He said bitterly. Jiang Xian is too hard to please. Guanshan looked down at the unconscious Jiang Xian and said, In 2 or 3 days. But it's not me. It's presently. As for Jiang Xian, tell him your guess about what happened today. He'll be honest. Lu Rue's eyes lit up. Yes, that's a good idea. Since Bei Guangji was caught, this matter was considered to have come to an end. The logistics team would continue to deal with Bei Guangji's henchmen. The rebuilt orphanage would naturally not be demolished. Guanshan returned to the private room under Lu Rue's awe-inspiring gaze that said, As expected, cold and flat-chested Snow looked at him with a subtle expression. So your name is Guanshan? Chapter 191. Guanshan was stunned, but he didn't care. After all, it was normal for Lu Rue's loud voice to be heard. So he simply nodded, Yes, I'm Guanshan. Guan as in the past, Shan as in the Green Mountain. The expression of cold and flat-chested Snow became more subtle. So it's you, they were both reporters, and they were both called Guanshan, and he could order the logistics team around. Who else could it be? Good Lord, he had searched high and low for him. And when he looked back, he found him in a dim light. Well, it didn't seem like he was that unlucky, but who cares? He really didn't expect that. He didn't see Guanshan in the operation to encircle the killer bees, but he saw him in the meeting with the netizens and even the netizens themselves. Fate was indeed indescribably wonderful. Of course, to be honest, he was more interested in the CSGO expert Guanshan. He wanted to find the demon god of the Yohao group purely because it was on the way, and also because he was curious. As a genuine A-level ability user, he wasn't interested in someone who wasn't even a B-level ability user. Even if this ability user was suspected to have more than 3 abilities and was directly responsible for the destruction of the killer bees. There were many powerful and strange ability users in the world, and it would be too tiring to find all of them interesting. So he asked Xiaolei, and after knowing that the person wasn't there, he didn't pursue the matter. Instead, he focused his energy on meeting the god of Green Mountain. Who knew that these two people were the same person? Guanshan looked at the other person with some confusion. You know me? Cold and flat-chested Snow nodded generously, and then smiled. I've seen your news reports, and I didn't expect you to be the anonymous reporter, the nameless hero. Guanshan didn't ask how he was anonymous, and he knew that the reporter was called Guanshan. Money makes the world go round. This person was obviously rich, and it was normal for him to know. Their newspaper was just a normal newspaper, and could only block the prying eyes of normal people. Guanshan shrugged. I'm not a nameless hero. I just did what I could. He didn't seem to be as exaggerated as the rumors said. He didn't seem like a cold-blooded butcher who would slaughter more than 20 innocent civilians. There must be some details hidden here. Under the cold, flat-chested Snow thought to himself. But after thinking about it, it made sense. If they were really killed, and there were still people in the Tan formation, there must be something going on behind the scenes. The person who spread this rumor was either stupid or evil. Either he was a mole, or he wanted Guanshan dead. If it weren't for this, he wouldn't have been curious and wanted to meet this newcomer who had risen to fame even though he hadn't joined the Tan formation for long. Since I know your name, I'll use my name in exchange. My name is Lu Yongying. Nice to meet you, Mr. Reporter. Cold and flat-chested Snow extended her hand and showed Guanshan a thought-provoking smile. Out of selfishness, he decided not to reveal his identity to Guanshan. Now that Guanshan had abused him in the game and refused to be his master so many times, when he found out the truth, Guanshan's expression would be very interesting. Ha ha! It wasn't easy to take advantage of an A-class. Of course, Lu Yongbing didn't forget that he was the one who begged to be Guanshan's disciple to learn skills. At most, he would scare Guanshan, but he wouldn't put on any airs. Guanshan was keenly aware of the change in Lu Yongbing's tone. If the previous person who was shamelessly begging to be his disciple was a pure otaku, now this person seemed to have turned into a client and even became arrogant. Although he didn't know what this guy was thinking. Client? It wasn't his turn yet. Guanshan extended his hand and shook Lu Yongbing's hand, then suddenly said, I suddenly remembered that I might be a little busy recently and probably won't have time to go online to play games. Teaching you will take some time. Why don't we talk about it later? After saying that, he let go of his hand and turned around to pick up his backpack. He smiled at Lu Yongbing and said, Thank you for treating me today, but I'm not used to owing people favors. How much is it? I'll transfer it to you. Lu Yongbing's smile suddenly froze on his face. Obviously, this was a tactful refusal. Wait, wasn't everything fine just now? Why did he suddenly refuse? Lu Yongbing looked on helplessly as his godly master was about to slip away again. Suddenly, he threw away the dignity and toughness of an A-class ability user and almost pounced on Guanshan. How can this be? This can't be. He cried exaggeratedly. I like to treat people the most. If you don't let me treat you, then some of my social etiquette, good morals, and even my soul will be destroyed. Guanshan had goosebumps all over his body and the corner of his mouth twitched. What nonsense! He couldn't help but glance at the door of the private room. Fortunately, it was closed. Did this guy really have no sense of shame? No wonder he could come up with such a username. Lu Yongbing immediately stopped talking and smiled flatteringly. Anyway, boss, you must accept my kind intentions. As for whether you will teach me or not, there will be a long time in the future. There will always be time. I can wait. Fine. He was determined to be my disciple. Guanshan sighed, afraid that this person would use this trick in public again. He kept his phone and said, Okay, I have to go first. If you have anything, contact me online. Lu Yongbing immediately went along with it. Boss, take care. After Guanshan left his sight, Lu Yongbing leaned against the dining table, the smile on his face gradually disappearing, and finally became expressionless. He muttered, If he can't go online to play games because of something, then it can only be the matter of the espers. According to this guy's previous behavior, once he started to come into contact with espers, there would be a series of things like poking a hornet's nest. Now, the Guei sect is watching him. Should I help him, in case he doesn't have time? No, not time is secondary. If he dies directly, Where can I find a boss who is willing to take me along? Li Yongbing's face fell. He felt that he must help Guan Shan if the latter was really in trouble. Fortunately, there are no missions recently. Let's observe for a while. Li Yongbing reached out and grabbed a cup of cola that had already turned to room temperature. With a thought, the water vapor in the air condensed into ice cubes and fell into the cup. A cup of ice cola was born again. 0 degrees. Li Yongbing's Esper ability was turn water to ice. He was an extremely rare elemental type Esper. When he awakened, he was a B-level Esper. Therefore, he became an A-level Esper at a young age, a real talent. But now, by accident, he had become the disciple of a C-level Esper. The next day, the famous author, educator, philanthropist Bei Guangji had a lot of scandals. At the same time, it was rumored that he had been detained by the police. Suddenly, the entire internet exploded. At that time, the Hangzhou Evening News, which happened to be the invitee, unexpectedly became the source of the news. The dramatic development also caused a lot of discussion among the netizens, and conspiracy theories emerged one after another. But there was no doubt that the Hangzhou Evening News was trending, and the attention it received increased again. As the instigator, Guan Shan confirmed that the procedures for the capital injection of the orphanage were completed. After letting Shuman Lin take full responsibility, he set off for Lu Qiuqiu's home. Chapter 192. Guan Shan woke up early that day because Shun Liangchuan offered to help him make breakfast. Not just for a day, but for every day in the future. What did this mean? Guan Shan didn't know, and Guan Shan didn't dare say. Anyway, he agreed. Shen Dinghua also kept her promise. Guan Shan just walked downstairs and heard the sound of the door opening. In exchange, Guan Shan gave a spare key to his house to Shen Dinghua. Shen Dinghua came to make breakfast. If something happened to Guan Shan and Guan Shan suddenly disappeared, he couldn't let her wait outside all the time. It was reasonable to give her the key. Click. The door opened. In the morning sunlight, a beautiful and lovely girl in sportswear appeared outside the door. Shen Dinghua seemed to have time to go out for a morning run. There was a thin layer of sweat on her forehead and cheeks. A lock of slightly sweaty black hair stuck to her temples. Her baby fat cheeks were flushed. The black sports bra wrapped around her full curves, rising and falling like a slime. Below was her slender waist. Her fair skin was dazzling under the sun. Her loose tracksuit pants and the belt around her waist showed a different kind of vigor and vitality than usual. As soon as Shen Dinghua came in, her expression became alert. She was like a cat with its ears erect, staring at Guan Shan. Guan Shan was about to greet her, but his movements suddenly froze. What's wrong? Shen Dinghua sniffed the air and then walked in front of Guan Shan. She was face to face with him, almost sticking to him. Guan Shan's whole body was stiff. He could almost smell the faint morning sunlight and sweat on Shen Dinghua's body. Of course, how could a girl's sweat be called sweat? It was fragrant sweat, the smell of hormones, youthful and sexy. The tip of Shen Dinghua's nose brushed past Guan Shan's side face. Her warm breath fell from his chin to his neck, collarbone, and finally stopped on his chest. I can smell it. Shen Dinghua narrowed her eyes and sniffed again. Then, she revealed a cute smile and said, "It's the smell of another woman." Guan Shan's eyes widened and his expression changed. He quickly denied, "Impossible." But then he realized that he had overreacted and added, "I only come into contact with other colleagues at work. The only people I've seen recently are the director of an orphanage and a subordinate of Officer Xia. There's no one else." Shen Dinghua reached out and tapped his Adam's apple to stop him from speaking. Then, her fingers slid down and landed on a hard object. She tilted her head and asked, "What is this?" Guan Shan lowered his head. It was the worker bee pendant that was hanging around his neck. The girl's white and tender fingers were pressing on the outer wall of the pendant through his clothes. At this moment, the worker bee in the necklace had become the carrier of the queen bee and Li Jing's soul. Through the glass and clothes, they shouldn't be able to detect anything strange. Otherwise, such a big bug might scare. Well, he thought too much. After all, his little comrade Shen was a good woman who could catch mice and fight cockroaches. She might not be scared, but she might take it to study what kind of species it was. Shen Dinghua snorted and said, I remember Xiao Shan said that he didn't like fancy decorations. What did he buy a necklace? So that's why Guan Shan breathed a sigh of relief and explained, didn't I go to a mountain village in Liaoshan with President Li before? This is a local specialty there. The villagers were all very hospitable. I couldn't handle it all, so I could only accept it. Well, they were indeed very warm. They were so warm that they were willing to sacrifice themselves for him, even though they hadn't met for a long time. As he said, he took out the necklace. The glass container was filled with a strange, gel-like liquid. A ferocious and strange wasp was floating quietly in it. It was strange. No matter how you looked at it, it didn't look like something a woman would give to a man. Shen Dinghua held the glass container in her hand and looked at it. She narrowed her eyes and said with a smile, I'm just kidding. If Xiaoshan can find other girls, I will eat this little bug on the spot. But unfortunately, it's impossible for Xiaoshan to find other girls. Although it's true, Guan Shan said helplessly, but you don't have to belittle me like this, right? Shen Dinghua put down the pendant in her hand and said with a smile, Who knows you better than me? Xiaoshan has been a modest gentleman since he was a child. He doesn't go too deep into anything. He only contacts people but doesn't communicate with them. For others, there is actually some undetectable indifference. If you can't even do the first step, of course, you can't do all the following steps. She walked briskly to the kitchen door and turned around to look at the whole house. Even I, your dear childhood sweetheart, have just been allowed to enter this house. Guan Shan couldn't refute. Since his parents died, his attitude towards people and things was indeed like this. It could be regarded as a deeper level of self-isolation. Shen Dinghua walked around but didn't enter the kitchen. Instead, she asked, Are you going out today? Guan Shan nodded. He hesitated for a moment and said truthfully, I'm going to the house of a female doctor who helped with the investigation in Sacred Coeur Hospital before. Shen Dinghua smiled faintly. Guan Shan blushed with shame. He braced himself and said, That, she wants to see me for something. F***. Why did he feel that the more he explained, the more he felt that something was wrong? Shen Dinghua sighed and said, It seems that I miscalculated. Today I have to eat this bug. Guan Shan suddenly felt that the worker bee pendant, which had been motionless like a dead body, suddenly trembled violently. Guan Shan was stunned. He thought that the queen bee felt offended. He didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He was still thinking about how to make the queen bee, which had been pretending to be dead, speak. He didn't expect that comradeship would accidentally make it move. However, he couldn't let the queen bee have any ill intentions towards Shen Dinghua. Guan Shan quickly said, No. The bug is poisonous and has thorns. What if it hurts you? You can bear to, but I can't bear to. Shen Dinghua puffed up her cheeks. Then tell me, what should I do? Guan Shan had an idea and said, You can go with me. That should be fine, right? Shen Dinghua blinked her eyes. Xiaoshan, your reaction is so fast. You seem to have become smarter this time. Was I stupid in the past? You're a super stupid idiot. Okay. Guan Shan watched Shen Dinghua walk into the kitchen and then began to make breakfast with familiarity. It seemed that Shen Dinghua had already familiarized herself with the house when she came to stay here last time. Guan Shan smiled. He inexplicably felt that they were an old couple. There was no doubt that Shen Dinghua's understanding of him made him feel happy. This showed that Comrade Shen valued him, just as he valued Comrade Shen. As for Lu Qiuqiu looking for him, she didn't say that he had to go alone. If it did involve things like superpowered people, then they could talk about it next time. Chapter 193. Lu Qiuqiu felt inexplicably uneasy as she waited in the living room. Her hands were full of paper documents and an old tape. In the past 3 days, she had once again asked her father, Lu Mingyi, to verify the authenticity of the medical record and whether Guan Shan had been hospitalized at Sacred Coeur Hospital. She also tried to ask people who might be related to it, such as the old director of Sacred Coeur Hospital and the nurses who had worked there for a long time. However, after the accident last time, the old director suddenly had a heart attack because of the shock. He was still lying in the intensive care unit. Even if she visited him, She was not allowed to mention anything related to it. As for the nurses who had worked there for 6 years, without exception, all of them died in the accident last time. Not a single one survived. Lu Qiuqiu knew at the time that the building in the hospital collapsed, resulting in the death of all the care workers who did not manage to escape in time. However, after experiencing that magical thing with Guan Shan, Lu Qiuqiu had deep doubts about this official statement. Those care workers were in different positions. Some of them were even at the front desk. They wanted to leave the hospital building, but all of them died in it. It was hard not to doubt that. In addition, Xiang Wen's evil deeds were coincidentally exposed later, which confirmed Lu Qiuqiu's conjecture. The collapse of Sacred Coeur Hospital and the death of the care workers must have something to do with Guan Shan. Then, was it also intentional that no care workers who had worked for more than 6 years? Lu Qiuqiu did not doubt Guan Shan. She knew the latter's character well enough. He was a noble, pure person who was free from vulgar interests. Although this might be an exaggeration, when Guan Shan let Baiakuya out and stayed in the room to face that terrifying monster, it did leave a deep impression in Lu Qiuqiu's heart. Moreover, Guan Shan and Lu Mingyi did not know the other party, so it was very likely that another force was involved. It was this force that made Guan Shan and Lu Mingyi lose their memories and gradually killed all the witnesses who might have left behind clues to conceal some information about Guan Shan's illness. In the past 3 days, Lu Qiuqiu could not help but wonder if it would be her turn next. However, her determination to help Guan Shan understand the truth was stronger than the fear of losing her life. A life-saving grace should be repaid with a life, right? Everything else, whether it was repaying with her body or being a slave, were empty words. At least, that was what Lu Qiuqiu thought. No matter how selfish she was, she hoped that she could do something useful for Guan Shan. At least, although the caregivers were dead, Lu Qiuqiu still found a lot of useful clues from Lu Mingyi, such as the information and medical records of other patients in the same period of time. She even found a treatment video that seemed to show the figure of the young Guan Shan. Coupled with Guan Shan's medical record, it was enough to prove that he had indeed received treatment at the Sacred Coeur Hospital for a period of time. Suddenly, the doorbell rang. Phew! Lu Qiuqiu took a deep breath, looked at the information, and got up to open the door. Guan, hello, Dr. Lu. What came into view was indeed Guan Shan's familiar face, but his expression was obviously a little too serious. He looked straight ahead and spoke as if he was interviewing a guest in front of camera. Lu Qiuqiu was slightly stunned and was also affected by the serious atmosphere. She said nervously, Mr. Guan, welcome. She had just put on a smiling face and opened the door a little when she saw the girl beside Guan Shan. Shen Dinghua held Guan Shan's arm, tilted her head, and smiled. Hello, Dr. Lu. I'm Shen Dinghua, Guan Shan's girlfriend. I'm worried about the safety of my family Shaoshan, so I took the liberty to visit you. You don't mind, do you? Gee, girlfriend? The smile on Lu Qiuqiu's face couldn't help but stiffen, and an inexplicable feeling of guilt came over her. This scene was tantamount to catching an adulterer, although in fact, nothing had happened. She couldn't help but look at the petite girl in front of her. So beautiful. No, it was better to say that she was so beautiful. She had long known that Guan Shan had a girlfriend, but when she really saw her, she found that this girl was unbelievably beautiful. Her facial features, voice, and every part of her body could be said to be perfect, exuding an amazing and strange charm that made people unable to help but stop their eyes on her. Even if judged from a woman's point of view, it seemed that no flaws on her body could be found at all. As a psychiatrist, Lu Qiuqiu was keenly aware that this was not because Shen Dinghua's appearance was really impeccable, but because from the first time you saw her, you would naturally have the idea that she was perfect. Lu Qiuqiu was secretly shocked because it was absolutely impossible for people to be perfect. So when you think someone is perfect, most of the problems are serious. Of course, this was in the psychological aspect. In terms of subjective aesthetics, it seemed to be understandable to have such a feeling. Lu Qiuqiu could only think like this with a trace of frustration. But even as a woman, she thought so. Then in the eyes of men, Shen Dinghua must be Venus, an unattainable beauty, a lively and cute version. Welcome, welcome, Lu Qiuqiu composed herself. But this matter involved a little bit of Mr. Guanshan's privacy. Guanshan was still happily thinking that this seemed to be the first time that little comrade Shun had officially announced that he was her boyfriend. When he heard this, he was stunned. Privacy? He winked at Lu Qiuqiu. It can't be related to psychics, right? That's not good to say. And why does it sound like I've done that? It's very bad. Guanshan turned his head and glanced at Shen Dinghua. The latter blinked and revealed a mischievous smile. Xiaoshan, have you? Guanshan immediately denied. No, I'm very normal. Shen Dinghua said innocently. What are you thinking about? I'm asking if you're hungry. Why are you saying that you're very normal? Guanshan, like hell I'll believe you. We just had breakfast not long ago, and you're asking me if I'm hungry? Lu Qiuqiu felt helpless. It seems that these two don't care much about privacy. Their relationship is really good. She first let Guanshan and Shen Dinghua in, then said, it's not something that Mr. Guanshan already knows, but something that you don't know. Guanshan was even more confused and frowned. How can I not know my privacy? Shen Dinghua's gaze fell on the documents on the table. She narrowed her eyes and smiled. These are the so-called privacy? Guanshan leaned over and picked up a document, looking at it. Medical record? Lu Qiuqiu nodded. Yes, medical record. She handed over the document in her hand, looked at Guanshan, and said solemnly, your medical record. P.S. Taking care of a cat is like taking care of a child. Fortunately, the illness is not serious. Injections and medicine are enough. Chapter 194. Guanshan was stunned when he heard that. He pointed at himself with a dumbfounded expression. Medical record? Mine? He didn't expect Lu Qiuqiu's so-called important matter to be like this. Guanshan knew his own physical condition very well. Even before he got the simulator, he had never been seriously ill, even though his body wasn't very good, and he could only be said to be sub-healthy. Since he had never been sick, how could he have a medical record? Moreover, Lu Qiuqiu was a psychiatrist. Did he have a mental illness before? Shen Dinghua glanced at the medical record. Her expression didn't change much, as if she didn't take it seriously at all. She just looked sideways at Guanshan and smiled. She joked, Xiaoshan, you can't really. Guanshan took the medical record and said quickly, how is that possible? Dr. Lu is from Sacred Coeur Hospital. In other words, the other party was treating mental illnesses, not other random diseases. Shen Dinghua tilted her head and showed a curious expression. But Xiaoshan has never been to Sacred Coeur Hospital before. I find it strange, too, but I believe Dr. Lu wouldn't lie. Guanshan whispered and looked at the medical record in his hand. Lu Qiuqiu had no reason to lie, and she wouldn't be stupid enough to lie about something that was obviously fake. There had to be something fishy about it. This old medical record was obviously not complete. Not only was there only one page, but it had also been burned. Many words were lost. However, the basic information of the owner of the medical record could still be seen clearly. The name, ID card, age, and date written on the medical record all corresponded to Guanshan's. Guanshan's expression gradually became serious, especially when he thought about how he had been out of school at that time because of his parents' accident. His memory of that half a year was really muddled, and he only had a vague impression of it. But this was normal. There was a limit to how much information the human brain could store. Just like now, if you were asked to recall what you did at a certain time last year, you probably wouldn't be able to remember much meaningful content, let alone 6 years ago. However, to say that he was in the hospital at that time was pure nonsense, not to mention that even Guanshan himself didn't remember. If that was the case, there was no reason that Shen Dinghua didn't know. But the medical record in his hand didn't seem fake. Guanshan's gaze slid to the doctor's signature at the end. Although the handwriting was flamboyant, he could still vaguely make out the character Lu. Guanshan's pupils constricted as he thought of the question that Lu Qiuqiu had repeatedly confirmed with him. His thoughts seemed to have touched static as he instantly understood. Lu Mingyi? He suddenly raised his head and stared at Lu Qiuqiu. The person who wrote this medical record is your father. That's why you keep asking me if I know your father. Lu Qiuqiu nodded and said helplessly, but you don't know him. Not only that, my father doesn't have any impression of you either. She pointed to the medical record. I found this medical record when I was sorting out the old medical record room. It was dug out from the ruins on the night of the Sacre-Cœur hospital's collapse. Because the hospital later completely switched to electronic medical records, that medical record room hasn't been used for almost 3 or 4 years. During that time, only the cleaning staff came in and out. The possibility of fraud is too small. Guanshan could also understand. He just needed to send this page to the logistics department to have it appraised, and they would know whether it was real or fake. Guanshan's mouth twitched. A treatment that neither the attending doctor nor the patient remembered? If this medical record was fake, then this lie was too full of loopholes. But if it was true, Lu Qiuqiu looked at Guanshan. I also thought it was ridiculous, but she looked at Shun Dinghua hesitantly. Well, you don't have to say anymore. I think I understand. In this case, there was only one possibility, and that was that there was a psychic involved. Guanshan sighed and didn't continue this topic. He put down the medical record and looked at the other documents and the videotape on the table. What about those? Lu Qiuqiu said, I asked my father to give me some information about the patients who were treated at the same time. This is against the rules, so I hope Mr. Guanshan can keep it a secret. If these are still not useful, my father had a student called Zhou Rahai at that time. He should have been his assistant at that time, but later I heard that he went to a research institute abroad to do a confidential project. We haven't been in contact since. You can ask him. She knew it was against the rules, but she still took out the information. Was she doing her best to repay him for saving her life? Guanshan solemnly thanked Lu Qiuqiu and declined the invitation to stay for dinner. He took the information and went back with Shun Dinghua. Only Lu Qiuqiu, who was a little disappointed, sat at the table in a daze. No one knew what she was thinking. That Dr. Lu seems to have some ideas about you. As soon as they got home, Shun Dinghua turned her head and said with a smile, Xiao Shan is so heartless. Guanshan touched her head and said, I'm not heartless. Now it's your turn to be heartless. Shun Dinghua tilted her head and pretended to be surprised. I thought Xiao Shan was too slow to notice. Guanshan pinched her cheeks and said hoarsely, I'm not a rock. Since ancient times, the hero saving the beauty was a place where love was high. Lu Qiuqiu's concern for him had long exceeded the level of ordinary repayment. This time, she even asked him to come to her house. It was hard not to notice. Shun Dinghua looked at him and smiled. That's right. You're not a stone. You're a mountain. The mountain is already full of flowers. Guanshan's face was full of black lines. Ow! He cursed in his heart. If there were to be any flowers, it should be him. Shun Dinghua stood on tiptoe, opened her mouth, and gently bit his face, leaving a few neat teeth marks. Shun Dinghua turned around and ran back to her house. Then she laughed secretly. You're so kind. Guanshan, whose face was full of saliva, was speechless. He sighed and touched the marks on his face. Forget it. They'll disappear later. Guanshan still felt a little regretful. He should have caught little Shun just now and planted a few flowers for her to experience what it meant to be full of flowers. Shun Dinghua was nowhere to be seen. Guanshan looked at the information in his hand and frowned. Although this medical record was purely fake in the eyes of ordinary people, it was related to a period of time after his parents' death. Shun Dinghua had no reason to not ask, especially when she actually cared about this medical record before. Instead, it seemed like she was avoiding something. Guanshan shook his head and dispelled his doubts. Little Shun should have seen that he was hiding something in the conversation with Lu Qiuqiu, so she tacitly chose to give him some space. Psychic? If she's a psychic, why would she do this? Guanshan fell in a deep thought. He didn't mind that he might have been treated at Sacre-Cœur Hospital. At that time, both of his parents died in an accident overnight. It was undoubtedly a huge blow to a high school student. It was normal for him to have some mental problems, but now that he was fine, it proved that he had already gotten over it. There was no need to dwell on it. But the question was, why would someone hide his experience? He was just a high school student. Why did they have to do this? Unless he was involved in an incident between superpowered people. Guanshan's eyes flashed. He took out the videotape, dug out the old VCR store at home, and began to play it. PS1. The title still can't be changed. Let's keep it for the time being. Chapter 195. The content of the video was very messy, and the quality was not very good. To be honest, it even had the atmosphere of a horror movie. The video recorded the process of a certain doctor doing his rounds on a certain day. It was unclear whether it was for internal display or for the review. According to Lu Qiuqiu, the video was shot during the period when Guanshan was hospitalized, so it was very likely that there would be relevant clues. The day the video was shot was a rainy day, and it was not a normal rain. Even inside the hospital, one could hear the pitter-patter of rain hitting the windows, and outside the window, it was pitch black. The hospital corridor was brightly lit, and it was exceptionally quiet. Occasionally, a nurse with a trolley would pass by. Along the way, the doctor smiled mechanically as he carried out his daily questioning. He checked the condition of every patient that he was responsible for, from the first floor to the top floor. It could be seen that the layout of the Sacré-Cœur Hospital was almost the same as the one that Guanshan had seen before. The long history of the hospital was not an exaggeration. It was well preserved. Unfortunately, it had been torn down by Guanshan. Among the patients, Guanshan could even find a few familiar faces. Of course, it was not that he remembered anything, but those patients had been hospitalized at Sacré-Cœur Hospital for decades, and Guanshan had seen them when he was undercover. These patients had been abandoned by their families, and there were many similar patients. It was because of this that they were chosen by Xiang Wen as experimental subjects. As long as the internal department was not involved, there was no risk of exposure. The whole video was about half an hour long. It repeated the same task, one ward after another. However, until the end of the video, Guanshan did not see the doctor find Guanshan, who was a patient 6 years ago. Did Dr. Lu give the wrong number? Guanshan frowned, put the video back, and started from the beginning. Or is he not among the patients being checked? This time, he focused on observing every passerby that appeared in the video. Finally, at the 24th minute, Guanshan saw a shadow flash past the dim corridor behind the camera. Guanshan pressed the pause button. He narrowed his eyes, rewound the video for a few seconds, and watched it carefully several times. With Guanshan's current dynamic vision, he could easily capture the figure's expression and movements, frame by frame, as if they were frozen. It was a young man, but he wasn't wearing a hospital gown. Instead, he was wearing normal clothes and a yellow plastic raincoat. He passed through the dim corridor without attracting anyone's attention. Of course, the most important thing was that it seemed to be him. Although 6 years was a long time ago, and the appearance of the young man in the video was very blurry, Guanshan was still able to recognize himself. What's more, Guanshan's eyelids twitched the moment he saw the figure. His strong intuition told him that this was you. From this perspective, he did not look like a patient, but more like a family member who had just come to visit a patient in the rain. If they were to look for Guanshan on the premise that he was a patient, they would not be able to find him. 6 years ago, he really went to the Sacré-Cœur Hospital, but it didn't look like he was receiving treatment. At least, it was unlikely that a mental patient receiving treatment would wander around the hospital. Where is he going? Guanshan closed his eyes and immediately recalled the specific location of the Sacré-Cœur Hospital. The young man was not facing any other ward but the stairs. He was either going up or down. There were no water stains on the raincoat, which meant that he didn't come back from outside. Then, he was going down. He was going out of the hospital. If it's really like what's written in the medical record, it should be non-aggressive schizophrenia. Although the symptoms are only daze and raving, he doesn't have the ability to take care of himself. There should be someone watching over him at all times. Guanshan looked at himself in the video suspiciously. The expression that appeared to be very rational and purposeful. He felt that the situation was even more confusing. First of all, he did receive treatment at the Sacré-Cœur Hospital. Second, he didn't look like he was sick in the video. He seemed to be able to enter and leave the hospital freely, and no nurse stopped him. In the end, no one remembered this matter anymore, including himself. Phew! Then, the key of the problem seems to be, why did the me in this video leave the hospital at that time? And what was he going to do? Guanshan pondered and pressed the play button again. The The video continued to play. At this time, the doctor was already on his way downstairs. He introduced the various facilities in the hospital and soon arrived at the lobby of the inpatient building. Guanshan was familiar with this place. The gorgeous and solemn, stained glass windows and the 4 marble pillars were all broken by him. The camera kept following the doctor, but at some point, it swept past the side door of the lobby. The teenager in the raincoat left a full side profile in this frame. He quickly disappeared from behind the door and blended into the dark, rainy night. This also supported Guanshan's thought. He really did leave the hospital. Wait, what is he holding in his hand? Guanshan saw that the fold of the raincoat were obviously a bit wrong. It was like he was holding something in his hand, but because of the angle and the raincoat's cover, he couldn't see anything. I can't analyze anything like this. I need more information. Guanshan frowned and flipped through the pile of documents next to him. It was all the files of patients in the same period. According to the information in the video, the doctor and Guanshan came down at almost the same time. In the previous video, there was no sign of Guanshan. Therefore, it was very likely that the floor where Guanshan appeared was the floor where Guanshan's ward was located. On the 3rd floor, Guanshan kept the information of all the patients in Ward 3 and removed those who developed serious diseases and died of accidents. In the end, there were only 2 people left. Qingyin in room 305 and Mu Anxian in room 311. Although the chances aren't high, I can only try my luck. These 2 people were discharged from the hospital in 2011 and 2014 respectively. Of course, Lu Qiuqiu couldn't provide any follow-up information. Guanshan had no choice but to find Shuman Lin and ask her to help investigate these 2 people. He only said that it was to prepare for the mission assigned by the higher-ups. Anyway, he was going to investigate the genetic industry chain behind Xiangwan. Using this reason wouldn't arouse suspicion. After so many missions together, this little invisible person was trustworthy. Guanshan waited for the news and finally remembered that he still locked the furnace in the warehouse of Cypress Town. He looked at the machinery heart and damaged air cannon in his backpack. Looks like it's time to find a more reliable warehouse. Chapter 196. Guanshan had previously placed some of his props, including the furnace core and the trioctahedron, in a relatively safe warehouse in Cypress Town. But that was based on the fact that he had thought that the simulator props didn't have a physical body. Now that he thought about it again, it wasn't safe at all. Of course, it wasn't that he was afraid of things being stolen. He was more afraid that someone would fall for the trap of the trioctahedron and summon the boogeyman, causing blood to splatter on the spot. But there's no news so far, so he should be fine, right? The corner of Guanshan's mouth twitched. He had an ominous feeling. After all, there was no news. It could be that nothing had happened, or it could be that he had died without a complete corpse, and no one had found him. Hoping that he was fine, Guanshan went to Cypress Town again after more than a month. He also called the landlord with the surname Zhang to confirm the situation. Judging from the other party's tone, he didn't seem to be surprised. Phew, it's good that he's fine. Guanshan breathed a sigh of relief. Standing in front of the warehouse, he brushed off the snow on his body, took out the key that he hadn't used for a long time, and opened the shutter door. Whoosh! The cold wind and dust inside the door rolled out together, and a bone-chilling coldness that was lower than the temperature outside suddenly came in. The empty warehouse was cold and cheerless. The only light that shone in from the outside was a rectangle, and the rest was deep darkness. The furnace core floated quietly in the middle, emitting a dim light that illuminated the various items on the shelves around it, especially the very eye-catching trioctahedron box. The trioctahedron would summon the boogeyman in a dark environment, so there had to be a light source around it. At first glance, it didn't seem any different from before Guanshan left, but when Guanshan lowered his head, his eyelids couldn't help but twitch wildly. The layer of dust on the ground was clearly divided into several layers, and each layer formed a large number of very messy lines. What the F***CK? Guanshan was shocked. These traces were not only signs of struggle and dragging, but also the shape of a large amount of blood splattered out. It wasn't just one layer, but layers upon layers. Just imagining it was like a painting of hell. Something really did happen. Guanshan sighed. But logically speaking, leaving such a dangerous thing outside for an entire month, it would be strange if nothing happened. He turned on the lights in the warehouse and walked around the entire warehouse. He found that one of the windows wasn't closed, and there were cracks on the glass. Guanshan checked the window lock. There was indeed signs that it had been forcibly pried open. The landlord said it's fine, and the warehouse door. It's SSSS, but isn't the number of too many people? From the traces on the ground, there were at least 10 people. Was it necessary to mobilize an entire gang of thieves for such an empty warehouse? Anstatses had no Zhao stats. That boogeyman. Guanshan approached the shelf to take a look, and he was stunned. He saw that the obsidian-like cube had now become a very full dark red, as if it had drunk enough blood, and even had a feeling that it would drip at any time. The color was so red that it was almost black, so Guanshan didn't notice the difference just now. Guanshan took the crystal down, played with it in his hand, and observed it. He found that it wasn't just the color change, but even the item description had changed. Hunter's Authority, Prototype, Trioctahedron. Effect: when night falls, you can become the night demon's incarnation and gain the same power until you drink blood. Description: your name echoes in the mountains, and they sing the virtue of the tyrant. Guanshan. He looked at the round crystal in his hand with a dumbfounded expression, and his heart was shocked. This isn't what I got before, is it? What the hell happened in the past month? Guanshan was in a mess in the cold wind. At the same time, the item that had finally returned to Guanshan's hand after a long time triggered a series of notifications from the simulator, and it started to refresh the screen. Cube has fallen into darkness. Night Demon has answered the summons. EXP plus 300. Night Demon has left. Cube has fallen into darkness. Night Demon has answered the summons. EXP plus 400. EXP plus 350. EXP plus 300. EXP plus 400. Night Demon has left. Cube has fallen into darkness. Night Demon has answered the summons. EXP plus 2000. Triggered special mission. Blood Feast. Blood Feast special mission. Description: Night Demon craves blood and death. It likes to dance and make merry in the midst of slaughter, and the short feast left it wanting more. Please sacrifice more. It will give you a gift. Current progress, 1/10. Night Demon has left. Cube has fallen into darkness. Night Demon has answered the summons. EXP plus 1700. EXP plus 2100. EXP plus 3000. EXP plus 2400. EXP plus 5000. Current progress, 14/10. Special mission, Blood Feast completed. Reward acquired. Night Demon's Gift *1. Night Demon's Gift. Effect: transforms partial octahedron into Hunter's Authority. Description: Night Demon has recognized your cruelty and brutality from your crazy high-quality sacrifices. It is greatly delighted and is willing to share this joy with you. Partial octahedron Hunter's Authority, Night Demon, has left. After Guanshan finished reading the entire process, and then looked at his skyrocketing EXP, he felt as if his heart had been trampled by a herd of grass mud horses. He was completely dumbfounded. This was a killing frenzy. Who on earth had provoked this murderous god? More importantly, I didn't do anything. Guanshan didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Why did the mission automatically complete for me? Judging from EXP, the first two people who had summoned the Night Demon were indeed just ordinary people, probably just thieves with ill intentions. The difference was that it had only been one person at the beginning, and later on, it had probably attracted some gang. But from the third time onwards, the amount of EXP had clearly changed to that of an Esper, and it should be a D-grade Esper. This Esper, who had broken into the warehouse for some reason, had also become interested in the cube, and then became the Night Demon's food. And this level of food seemed to have stimulated the Night Demon's ferocity, so much so that it even triggered a special mission that Guanshan had never seen before. What happened next was even more magical. This Esper definitely belonged to some organization, and his death attracted more people. Among them, there was even a C-grade Esper who had reached at least level 10 to 13 according to the simulator's evaluation. But in the face of the Night Demon, they were just a dish. Thus, the Night Demon left after eating heartily, and also helped Guan Shan complete a mission. Chapter 197. Current experience points: 9555, 010, 0000. Guan Shan looked at his experience points that had skyrocketed. He was only 5,000 points away from the bottleneck and fell into a subtle silence. You're already a mature tool. You should learn how to level up yourself. JPG. What else could Guan Shan say in the face of such an overly diligent tool? He could only accept the advanced hunter's authority and then tirelessly clean up the scene to prevent any clues from being discovered. Fortunately, the boogeyman did a clean job and didn't leave any traces of bones. The landlord was lazy enough to not come and take a look. Otherwise, it wouldn't be as easy as it is now. Guan Shan casually found a place and used gravity manipulation to brush away the dust. After using it more and more, Guan Shan became more and more proficient with gravity manipulation. Not only could he manipulate large objects, but he could also affect small objects like dust and even air. However, he could only control the dust and barely interfere with the air. I keep feeling that the upper limit of this skill is more than this. Guan Shan looked at the dust that was pushed away by an invisible force and sat down casually. He thought to himself, rather than saying that it's gravity, it's better to say that this skill is controlling gravity. If one day I can control particles at will and let them combine at will, wouldn't it be equivalent to being able to create everything? The moment this bold idea came into his mind, it really scared himself. However, Guan Shan immediately shook his head and denied this conjecture. It's too difficult. If I want to recombine matter, simply splitting and recombining is definitely not enough. I need to interfere on a more microscopic level. With this skill's current performance, it's simply impossible to do that. Guan Shan could clearly feel that gravity manipulation had a bottleneck. Although the skill said that he could control all objects, when he really tried to control them, he could clearly feel that it was getting more and more difficult to resist. The specific manifestation was that he couldn't concentrate on interfering with a fixed object. He didn't know if it was because his current level wasn't high enough. Guan Shan controlled gravity to clean up the dust in the entire warehouse while he activated Furnace Core again. The scroll of the skeleton-like spectral blacksmith waiting quietly beside the furnace slowly unfolded and projected into the air. Guan Shan tossed the machinery heart and damaged air cannon into it. Begin forging raw materials. Mechanical heart *1. Damaged air cannon *1. Predicted direction. Armed intelligent entity. Countdown. 47. 59. 59. Armed intelligent entity? Could be a bionic robot that can fight? Guan Shan rubbed his chin. 2 days. It's even shorter than the time when I forged the Underworld Devil Blade. Could it be that the quality of the Underworld Devil Blade is higher than the robot? In terms of technology and practicality, this should obviously be higher, right? Guan Shan's long-range abilities were still lacking. He only had a Glock that had been modified twice. If he could have the assistance of a robot equipped with an air cannon, it would definitely be like adding wings to a tiger. However, Demon Blade is a weapon that can grow. It should be more powerful. Demon Blade's attack power had increased from 1,200 to 2,000. It could easily kill monsters below level 10, which was equivalent to the life of a normal grade D metahuman. The more monsters it killed, the stronger it would become. As long as Guan Shan was in the dungeon, it would continue to become stronger. Moreover, as it grew by a percentage, the attack power of the blade would be even more terrifying in the later stages. I'll stay here for the next 2 days and see if I can find the people behind those unlucky bastards. A grade C metahuman and so many grade D metahumans. Since the 10th formation did not detect their deaths, they must belong to a civilian organization. This was actually too conservative. Guan Shan felt that it must be a criminal organization. Guan Shan narrowed his eyes and put everything in the warehouse into his backpack. Sage's pocket watch, locked box, key to a certain box, hunter's authority, these things together took up all 18 slots in his backpack. Of course, because of the mutation of trioctahedron, the box and key were no longer useful. Guanshan tried to sell them to the store that sold the simulator. However, these two items only added up to 50 game coins. He might as well sell them directly. At least the box and key were inlaid with gemstones. The main body looked like it was made of gold. It could probably be sold for a lot of money. As for the connections, Guanshan was afraid that he would be cheated, so he decided to ask Byakuya. This kid had a lot of connections as a detective. He was also familiar with the person in charge of the metahuman black market. It would not be a problem to leave it to him. After Guanshan made up his mind, he immediately called Byakuya. After the call went through, Byakuya was very excited. Guanshan? What a coincidence, I was just about to call you. Guanshan was stunned. Byakuya said, there's news of Venom's whereabouts. Guanshan was overjoyed. The other half of the Xidagarba statue that Byakuya had investigated before was in the hands of Venom, a gray bee metahuman. However, he was a metahuman who wandered in the gray area. Although he was registered and not marked in red, the Tin Formation had always suspected that he was related to some gray industries. However, no evidence was found. There were actually many metahumans like him. For example, the metahuman black market traded some high-risk psionic items. However, the Tin Formation acquiesced to the existence of such an organization. It was unknown if it was related to their interests. Guanshan asked, where is he? Is there a way to get the Xidagarba statue? Byakuya said, next month he will go to the black market in Jiangbei to auction off the half of the Xidagarba statue. At that time, as long as you can come up with the right price, you will be able to get it. With the black market as a security guarantee, at least during the handover, he won't dare to play tricks. Sell it? However, it was normal. The half of the Xidagarba statue had incomplete functions. For ordinary people, it had a little soothing and healing effect, but it was useless for metahumans. However, it couldn't be ruled out that this guy wanted to fish and use the information about the half of the Xidagarba statue to fish out the other half. Guanshan looked at the Xidagarba statue in his backpack and muttered in his heart. Even if it was fishing, he had to give it a try. Byakuya said again, but there's a problem. We are not eligible to enter the auction because the auction only accepts barter, so we must at least bring something that the organizer of the black market recognizes. Guanshan pondered for a moment and looked at the box and key in his backpack. Must it be a psionic item? Is it good enough to let go of a psionic item before? Byakuya was stunned, then replied, not really, but the value must be high enough. Guanshan took out the box and took a photo of Byakuya. Byakuya was silent for a long time, looking at the golden box that was at least 30 centimeters square, decorated with various gems and the key, then asked, brother, tell me honestly, did you rob some chief? Even if metahumans were generally richer, the value of this item was enough to tempt people, not to mention the carvings on it were not ordinary. Some female metahumans would probably be very attracted, right? Guanshan smiled. Just tell me if it is enough or not. Yes. Byakuya said firmly, then asked, what psionic item was it previously stored? I may have to appraise it when the time comes. Guanshan thought for a moment. A bead that can summon a psionic creature similar to a demon, but that bead is gone now, so it should have no effect on the box. It was indeed gone, and had become another prop. Byakuya nodded. Okay, I will contact you in a few days to meet with the black market guide. Brother, you can treat it as the first time you are looking for my client. Guanshan naturally agreed. After hanging up the phone, his eyes flickered. A Class B metahuman. I am afraid it will not be that easy to get the Xidagarba statue this time. Chapter 198. Is he the owner of those things in the warehouse? It doesn't seem to be anything special about him. Xiao Bei, who had been secretly observing, waited quietly for half an hour, but Guanshan still hadn't come out of the warehouse. He couldn't help but mutter in his heart. Is he going to live inside? Didn't they say that there were only a few shelves and those damn things inside? Xiao Bei had already sent the photo of Guanshan he took to the Free Logistics 4 group, a group they had set up in a special chat channel for ability users. The members in charge of intelligence work in the group would investigate this guy's identity, and he was waiting for new instructions. It's finally here. Xiao Bei's eyes lit up when he saw the new message in the group. Intelligence Customer Service Number 1. Found it. This person is called Guan Shan. He is a C-level ability user recruited by the Tay and Formation Yohao Group in October this year. His nickname is Demon God. He is a rare dual ability user with space and body abilities. He is known for his ruthlessness and cruelty. I will send you a document for you to read. Transport Number 3. No way. Someone from the Tayan Formation? Are you kidding me? Is he a criminal? There are almost 20 lives in that warehouse. Intelligence Customer Service Number 2. He is an off-staff member and has a close relationship with the Celestial Xiale. Intelligence Customer Service Number 1. Number 3. You are too naive. Look at the document. When Guan Shan first appeared in the Tayan Formation's records, he already killed 20 people. Transport Number 3. Sorry to disturb you. Transport Number 1. Xiale? Since when could he tolerate people with this kind of character? It seemed that the serious injury and retirement had a great impact on him. Transport Number 2. What do we do now? Are we still going to take that spiritual item? Transport Number 1. Take it. We have already lost half of our people in the warehouse. If we can't get that spiritual item, we can't explain it to the higher-ups. Transport Number 3. But how we get it? That unknown spiritual item is enough to kill, and the upper limit is unknown. Transport Number 1. That thing needs to be triggered under certain conditions. I've already analyzed the images that were sent back earlier. It needs to be in the box to work. Every time, the monster only appears after the box is closed. It's very easy to stop it. As for that Guan Shan, I'll deal with him. If he's a strong opponent, I might be able to use this opportunity to break through to B-Class. Transport Number 3. So that's how it is. Since Big Boss is personally involved, it will definitely be a piece of cake this time. Transport Number 1. Number 2. Continue to pay attention to Guan Shan's movements and report to me. I will apply to the management the right to use the blood parasite as insurance. Transport Number 2. Yes. Transporter Number 2 was Xiao Bei. In his heart, he thought, as expected a boss, he's so meticulous and careful when doing things. However, this ordinary-looking young man actually had the infamy of a demon god. The number of lives he had taken really shocked Xiao Bei. Xiao Bei and the others belonged to the Free Logistics Group. It was not a pure criminal organization like the Killer Bees that made a living by killing people. Instead, it was a logistics organization that walked between the black and white. It had a deep relationship with the black market. As the name implied, their business was to deliver things. However, not only did they not care about the origin of these things, they would even use some improper means to obtain them. For example, the unknown spiritual item in this warehouse. However, this failure was not the result of their initiative to steal from the beginning. At first, it was just the disappearance of a few thieves. Then, it was the disappearance of the Espers who were sent to investigate. They just wanted to find the whereabouts of the Esper and inadvertently became greedy for the box and the crystal. Who knew that the moment they closed the box, death would come. However, now, someone had to be responsible for this mistake. If it was not them, then it could only be Guan Shan who had caused all this. Xiao Bei's Esper ability was a C-class vegetative. Not only could he control plants, but he could also completely blend into them and sneak around when there were more than 3 types of plants nearby. He quietly waited in place. It was not until the evening of the second day that the news of the operation officially appeared. Xiao Bei woke up from his drowsiness and patted his head and shoulders. There was a layer of snow on them. The orange light of the setting sun made him squint his eyes. Transport Number 3. I have created chaos in the north of Hangzhou. It is estimated that I can delay the main force of the Yohao group for 1 hour. Transport Number 1. I have arrived at the destination. Number 2 reporting. Transport Number 2. He has been in the warehouse and has not moved until now. There is no ambush nearby. He is alone. Transport Number 1. Very good. After the operation begins, you go around to the side of the warehouse and take the opportunity to sneak attack and control him. Always pay attention to where the spiritual item is. Xiao Bei was already very familiar with this set of tactics. He took a deep breath to adjust his state of mind. He nodded and slowly moved along the green belt around the warehouse. At the same time, transport number 1, Bian Xingyun, had already arrived at the warehouse door. She was wearing a tight black combat suit that outlined the smooth lines of her muscles. Her whole face was covered by a metal mask, and only a pair of eyes could be vaguely seen. Bian Xingyun had a long whip mixed with a metal chain at her waist. It was very ostentatious. "Hey, you, what are you doing? Don't stand in front of my warehouse with your strange clothes." Landlord Zhang, who had come to check, frowned and shouted. In fact, Landlord Zhang had come to see the warehouse, but he had just walked around casually. He felt that something was wrong, but he did not think too much about it. However, the more he thought about it, the more he felt that something was wrong. He was afraid that the tenant was doing something illegal in the warehouse, so he could not help but want to test it out. He did not expect to see a suspicious cosplayer standing in front of the warehouse as soon as he arrived. He did not know what he was doing. Landlord Zhang came over aggressively. Bian Xingyun glanced sideways, and the corners of his mouth curled up. "Just right. I will use this mortal to knock on the door." Swoosh! A white light flashed like lightning. Bian Xingyun had unsheathed her long whip and lashed it at the middle-aged man. Without hesitation, it was extremely ruthless. The long whip cut through the air and made a terrifying sonic boom. With the weight of the metal on it, once it hit, it would either be dead or crippled. Clang! The metal collided and sparks flew. The long whip and the long knife intertwined. The whip wrapped around the knife due to inertia and was straightened by the force. Landlord Zhang was stunned on the spot. His body trembled, and he staggered back a step, almost falling. Standing in front of him was Guan Shan, who was holding the demon blade. Guan Shan narrowed his eyes and looked at the woman in front of him. "You came for the people who died here. Die." Landlord Zhang's pupils trembled. He was so scared that he covered his mouth and hurriedly ran back, shouting, "Help, help." Bian Xingyun shook her head. "I came for the thing that killed them here." Guan Shan shrugged. "Sorry, it's gone." Bian Xingyun looked at the door of the warehouse and saw the skeleton illusion. "It's okay. You seem to have other things here that can replace it. We are not killer bees. As long as you are willing to hand it over." Before she finished, Guan Shan sighed. "You already planned to kill me. You don't have to be so polite, right? You haven't even finished your sentence, and the simulator has already started." Xiao Bei, who was about to attack from behind, suddenly felt a chill from behind. He turned around and saw a smoke-like shadow. That black shadow was holding a crowbar in his hand. "Sorry, your HP bar is showing." Chapter 199. Scene scan complete. Generating horror game. Generated horror game. Zombies Besieged 2. While Bian Xingyun was talking to Guan Shan, the voice of the simulator rang in Guan Shan's ears again. It was a clear sign that this woman, who claimed that Free Logistics was not an organization like Killer Bees, already had killing intent in her heart. Guan Shan was not surprised. How could a paranormal who could kill an ordinary passerby without hesitation be a kind person? Moreover, a group of espers had already died at the hands of the boogeyman. They were most likely from Free Logistics. It would be a joke to say that they could let bygones be bygones. This woman most likely saw the furnace core in the warehouse and saw that Guan Shan was alone, so she wanted to take him for herself. Guan Shan could only shrug in his heart, indicating that he was used to the abyss of suffering in the Esper world. However, the name of the horror game made him choke on his words. Zombies Besieged 2. The last time he saw this name was in the alley near Zhao Hong's house, where he was besieged by people sent by killer bees. He still had an impression of that instance dungeon because it was the most casual and crude instance dungeon he had ever experienced. Just like the storyline given by the simulator, it was an extremely bad horror game. But he never expected that this trash game would have a sequel. Plot loading complete. You're playing another bad horror game. The corners of Guan Shan's mouth twitched. I'm F*** King here to play again. Am I a masochist in this instance, or a upmaster who specializes in finding trash games to complain about? Why would I play Zombies Besieged 2 after knowing that it was a trash game after playing Zombies Besieged 2? Bad and cliched horror game. Cliched apocalypse background. Cliched Resident Evil. Cliched zombies besieged. Everything is cliched. It doesn't seem to be any different from the previous one. You think this way, and then you realize, sure enough, there's no difference. Asterisk note. Only by killing the final boss can this simulation end. Your plot really has an upper and lower section. But what the hell do you mean by sure enough, there's no difference? There's no difference, yet you're still saying that. Why are you putting it here? As expected, we shouldn't expect any surprises from the sequel of a trashy game. Guan Shan couldn't help but complain, but then again, there must be something wrong with me for having such high expectations for it. Ha! The whip tore through the air and swung towards Guan Shan's face. The sharp sound of friction in the air was enough to cause goosebumps. You'll die if you're distracted at this time. I admit that as a multi-ability user, you must be far stronger than the average C-class. I've also heard of your achievements. Bian Xingyun said coldly, but at the end of the day, you're just a Class C. Facing you is no different from facing 2 or 3 Class Cs at the same time. Coincidentally, what I'm best at is fighting one against many. Although what she said was very reasonable, it was a pity that Guan Shan could no longer understand her at this time. Standing in front of him was a woman in a long white dress with a tongue. Boss, Hell Incarnation, mutated zombie tongue-pulling LV, 19, HP, 32,000, description. Those who slander will have their tongues nailed here. It had to be said that although the simulator's evaluation of Zombie Siege 2 did not change much, in fact, the monster design was a little more meticulous than the previous game. If the previous zombies were said to have strange shapes and sizes, then the monsters this time belonged to the category of originality that made people want to vomit. Goo goo goo. Guan Shan looked at the tongue in front of him. Yes, the tongue was swinging around and then making an incomprehensible sound. This tongue was as tall as a person, thick and long, and covered in yellow mucus. At the same time, rotten flesh and holes were all over it, constantly shrinking as it wriggled, making one's scalp tingle. In addition, at the bottom of the tongue where it touched the ground, there were large and small dense meat blisters that finally turned into slender tentacles. What was even more frightening was that the body of this erect tongue was wrapped in a white dress, and even vaguely through the meat blisters and rotten flesh formed a graceful female figure. But in the place where there should be a head, there was a whole tongue that stretched out. And just now, it was this tongue that swung over and wanted to lick Guan Shan's face. Even if Guan Shan knew that the original appearance of this strange thing in front of him was indeed a normal woman, at least the appearance was normal. He also felt a kind of creepy nausea that was simply unacceptable. F***, don't touch me, Guan Shan hurriedly avoided the tongue attack with a face full of disgust and shouted from the bottom of his heart. This kind of thing, even if touched once, it would be terrible. Gravity control, start. Guan Shan fully used his fastest speed and retreated out of the tongue's attack range. But he obviously underestimated the flexibility of the tongue. He saw that the tongue turned in midair, and with a swish, it changed direction and attacked Guan Shan again. No matter how Guan Shan dodged, there was almost no blind spot. Guan Shan could only use the Glock to kite, but the damage of the Glock was still too low, and this tongue was not a part of the boss body, but a whip. If Guan Shan did not face the boss face-to-face, he was afraid that he would have to do a lot of useless things. I have to find a way to attack its body. It should be that pile of meat blisters. Guan Shan narrowed his eyes and dodged another attack. This thing's attack frequency was too high, and its attack power was very high. A graze would cause hundreds of damage, and if he stopped and made a mistake, he might be hit continuously. In other words, the margin for error was very low. But I can increase the margin for error. Guan Shan pulled out the underworld goblin blade, suddenly stopped, sighed, and faced this terrifying monster with resignation. Come on, we are the same level. I am not afraid of you. Then he saw that the tongue was instantly magnified in his field of vision, and he could even see the coating on it. Those fine and dense lumps on the soft and moist flesh moved rhythmically with the rhythm of the tongue. F***. I am scared, I am scared. Guanshan was so scared that goosebumps appeared all over his body. He felt that if he was licked, he would be dirty. No, even if I am attacked once, it will be a betrayal to Comrade Shun. He reached out and touched his forehead, and a strange white pattern instantly spread out and covered his whole body. Magic rune drawing, protection, 35% damage reduction. At the same time, Guanshan suddenly sped up, raised his blade, and rushed toward the tongue. Heart of Massacre, use 15% damage reduction. At that moment, Guanshan heard his heart beat violently, and a violent urge to kill surged in his heart, making him want to tear everything in front of him into pieces. This uncomfortable feeling made Guanshan frown, and his movements paused for a second. Swish! The tongue attacked again and instantly split into countless pieces. Bang! Guanshan was hit and flew out, only stopping when he stabbed the underworld goblin blade into the ground. Phew! Guanshan stood up and patted his clothes, looking at the deep wounds on his body. He exhaled, and his eyes were unprecedentedly cold. Instead of retreating, he turned into a shadow and arrived beside the tongue in the blink of an eye. As long as no one knows, it is not a betrayal. P.S. I spent a lot of time on my graduation thesis. Continue to update. Chapter 200-0. A damage number that Guanshan had never seen before popped up in front of his eyes. Plop! At the same time, Guanshan could feel that the heart that was beating violently was working. The wounds on his body recovered in the blink of an eye, as if he had never been injured at all. The killing heart gave him 3 seconds of invincibility. The invincibility of this item was completely different from the golden bell shield of the Xitigarbus statue. The latter blocked damage, while the former healed wounds instantly, which was equivalent to not being injured at all. Whoosh! Guanshan rushed towards the tongue that was flailing wildly. While he was moving around, the high attack frequency did not leave many openings, making it impossible for Guanshan to get close quickly. 3 seconds passed in the blink of an eye, and he was attacked again. 1360. If the 50% damage reduction was removed, the true damage would be 2,720. In addition to Guanshan's own body's toughness reduction, this boss basic attack was almost 3,000. As long as it hit 3 times, Guanshan would immediately enter a state of low HP. However, Guanshan had now raised this number to 6. Moreover, he now had the Sage Pocket Watch on him, which could reset the cooldown of the magic rune drawing. As long as he used the life rune, he could immediately recover 35% of his HP, further increasing the margin for error. As for the healing rune, it was not very useful in such a high-intensity battle. This guy's mobility seems to be very poor. Guanshan narrowed his eyes sharply, looking for an opportunity to break through while moving at high speed. Although he was now under the influence of the killing heart, and his heart was filled with the desire to destroy, this would not turn him into a beast that did not know how to think. Combined with the description given by the simulator, slanderer, have your tongue nailed here. This proved that although this guy's attack was strong, his mobility might not be good. As long as he could get close, Guanshan had an idea. At this moment, the Shadow Clone had finished the battle, or rather, it was a one-sided slaughter. After leveling up, the Shadow Clone was more agile than before, and there was basically no signal delay. It was not difficult to deal with an Esper who specialized in concealment. Moreover, the HP bar had completely exposed his position. Experience plus 5,100. This was the final outcome of another enemy. Guanshan didn't care about the guy named Mutated Zombie Soul Reaper by the simulator. He didn't care what kind of person he was under that deformed skin that seemed to be made up of countless human skulls. As long as he was judged as an enemy by the simulator, he would definitely be someone who harbored killing intent towards him. Once the simulator started, one could only kill the opponent or be killed by the opponent. Guanshan had no choice. Current experience, 100650100000. Not broken through. LV. 19 LV. 20. Not broken through. As expected, to advance from level 19 to level 20, he still needed to complete a breakthrough quest. Otherwise, he would not be able to continue leveling up. But now it's 2 against 1. Guanshan controlled his shadow doppelganger and used the soul-sucking bell to harass the boss. From time to time, he would feign attacks to attract the boss's attention and then quickly retreat. The soul-sucking bell was mainly targeted at those with particularly fragile souls. Without any special hints, it would not have much effect on ordinary people. At most, it would cause them to be slightly absent-minded. But in the end, it still had an impact, especially in this kind of battle where both sides were very nervous. Guanshan moved around while observing. Every time the shadow doppelganger used this soul-sucking bell, the attack of the tongue would be slower than before, and the angle would obviously deviate. I can use this gap to make the opponent make a mistake. Guanshan bent his waist to avoid the attack. Then, he seized the opportunity and increased his speed by a notch. After taking the attack head-on, he feinted and his forked tongues instantly twisted together. A large hole was torn open in the dense net of attacks. Guanshan rolled on the ground, took out his Glock, and fired a few shots at the boss's body. Bang, bang, bang. With an infinite magazine and split bullets, Guanshan used a pistol to create an effect similar to a Gatling gun. From a visual point of view, it was undoubtedly very intimidating. At the same time, the shadow doppelganger also used a crowbar to sneak attack from behind. The boss must have seen clearly how the shadow doppelganger used a crowbar to kill another elite monster. From a normal point of view, in order to avoid rain in certain areas, the boss would definitely choose to block the shadow doppelganger and conveniently dodge the bullets. But the boss who should have returned to defend did not do so. It braved the crowbar and the bullets, and from the center of the tongue, a bloody gully was split open. And in the middle of the gully was a long nail. This nail was flashing with electricity, and those scattered tongues, one by one, were nailed to the surrounding ground. The tip actually had sharp metal pieces hidden. -11089. 500. 500. 500. 450. 450. 450. The damage caused by the crowbar was very shocking. In an instant, it took away 1/3 of the boss's HP. And the following string of damage came from the Glock's incendiary split bullets. Although the individual bullets did not look like much, due to the large number of bullets, the damage was also not bad. This wave of attacks took away a total of about 15,000 HP. It could be considered as a heavy blow to the boss. But Guanshan did not have time to be happy. His pupils constricted. Looking at the layout, his heart sank. He immediately recalled the shadow doppelganger, and then quickly retreated towards a gap. But at this moment, gravity manipulation, as cooldown time was up, Guanshan's own speed dropped sharply, and he was unable to escape from the tongue's encirclement. Buzz, buzz. In an instant, a dazzling ball of electricity gathered on the nail, resonating with the surrounding metal pieces. Those metal pieces lit up one by one. The electricity was like snakes, forming a circle, and just happened to encircle Guanshan in the middle. The surrounding dust was affected, and all of it floated in midair. After a moment of silence, a sudden clap of thunder sounded. Boom! A bolt of lightning as thick as a water bucket suddenly descended. The white lightning spread out from the nail in the middle, the blazing heat destroying everything in the blink of an eye. The stones on the ground were all turned into scorched earth in an instant, and those metal pieces seemed to form a barrier, blocking the lightning in this area. In an instant, this circular area seemed to have turned into a lightning pool filled with plasma. Boom! 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 Thunder and lightning intertwined, bombarding each other and turning everything into dust. Cough, 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 cough. I have to say, you are indeed very strong, but I have said before I am very good at one versus many. No one can escape from the electric domain. The voltage of this set of equipment is prepared for B-grade arcanists. Once it is activated, no one can survive. Bianxian looked at the lightning pool in front of her, showing a somewhat smug smile, and wiped the blood from the corner of her mouth. Huff, huff, cough, cough. She gasped for breath and barely managed to stand, looking at her torn abdomen, and reached out to cover the organs that were constantly flowing out. What a mess. This person's methods are as cruel as the legends say. But fortunately, I won in the end. Bien Xingyun's arcana was called superconductivity, and the clothes she was wearing, plus the weapon in her hand, were actually a special discharge device. In a normal state, it could stimulate bioelectricity, allowing her to have a strong physical body. And after it was activated, as she said, it was a veritable killing machine. Bien Xingyun walked toward the warehouse, braced herself, and prepared to harvest her spoils of war. At this time, the sky was getting darker, and finally from dusk to night. Nightfall descended. Chapter 201. From sunset to nightfall, the process seemed slow, but in fact the speed at which the sun was about to set was very fast. Especially now that it was winter, Hangzhou's night came especially early. Often, the sky would turn completely dark in a few minutes. The battle just now was neither fast nor slow, but it was enough for the night to cover everything. Sizzle. The light next to her flickered twice and instantly lit up. Bien Xingyun took 2 steps and looked at the rapidly tilting shadow under her feet. She suddenly stopped at the door of the warehouse. There were no screams. She suddenly realized this. This was very abnormal. In a high-voltage electric field that was enough to seriously injure a B-grade arcanist, anyone who still had a sense of pain would definitely act like a normal human in the face of extreme pain. And screams, no matter if it was of fear or pain, were necessary. But now, apart from the roar of thunder and lightning, there was only the sound of wind wrapped in snow. Guanshan, who should have died in pain and become the main theme, was silent. Not good. He's not dead. Bien Xingyun was alert and suddenly turned back. Nothing happened in front of her eyes, only the rolling thunder and the quiet street in the night. Bien Xingyun took 2 steps back and frowned. Was she overthinking? If Guanshan's physical strength was not high enough, it was possible for him to be killed in an instant. In that case, he would not make any screams. But Guanshan was also a physical strengthening type arcanist, so the probability was very small. She could not be careless. Bien Xingyun took a deep breath and steeled her heart. She activated the remaining electric field and directly used the high temperature to glue the flesh of the wounds on her body together, stopping the continuous loss of blood. Ugh! She groaned and closed her eyes. When she opened them again, her eyes were extremely sharp, and she clenched the whip in her hand. Even if he was not dead, this person could not withstand such a powerful electric current. Bien Xingyun was sure that this person's injuries would only be worse than hers. Even if he was not dead, this person was no match for her. Bien Xingyun panted as he vaguely heard the sound of police sirens. With the commotion here and the landlord's call, even the speed of the police dispatch was much faster. Those people from the Taiyan formation won't be able to hold them off for long. The news must have spread by now. We have to take the things away as soon as possible. Bien Xingyun walked into the warehouse and immediately saw the furnace floating in the air, as well as a human figure wrapped in light. It was a completely neutral and complex mechanical body that resembled a doll. Its outer shell was translucent, and the mechanical structure within could be clearly seen. The left arm of the doll did not have a palm, but a cannon muzzle. It looked very sci-fi. Although Bien Xingyun did not know what this was, he could tell that the furnace in front of him was the device that had created this humanoid mechanical body. Wang, she stretched out her hand and activated the folded space that was developed by the space-type ability users. A pale blue light suddenly shot out from the silver gem on her arm armor and shrouded the furnace in front of her, then quickly closed. At this moment, Bien Xingyun suddenly tilted her head and dodged the strong wind behind her. However, at the same time, her abdomen was pierced by a sharp weapon. Zap! She was very calm. She stopped the folded space in an instant and seamlessly transformed it into an electric field. From her body, the final electric current exploded with a loud bang. With her body as the conductor, the superconductivity ability could expand the power of the electric current to the maximum. Anyone who came into contact with her would be attacked by this terrifying electric current. You really didn't, Bien Xingyun sneered. The moment she turned her head, her expression froze, and her words stopped. That was because what was in front of her was not Guanshan, but a huge, pitch-black monster. This behemoth had no face and was almost integrated into the night. Two sharp and slender horns grew on its forehead, and two huge wings hung down from its back. Just by squatting, it could hold up the ceiling of the warehouse and completely block the exit of the warehouse. It was very oppressive. The shadow it cast was enough to completely shroud Bian Xingyun. One of its palms was enough to crush her. It did not come from the night. It was the night itself, and what pierced Bian Xingyun's body was not a weapon. It was the monster's finger that was as sharp as a sword. Zap! The electric current from Bian Xingyun's body only created a few electric arcs on the monster's skin before it was annihilated in the black hole-like night. Roar! The monster let out a soul-stirring roar. It slowly raised its hand and lifted the pierced Bian Xingyun. What's going on? What is this? Where did this damn thing come from? The monster in a box. But didn't that thing not appear at all? Shouldn't it only be summoned when the conditions are met? Why did it appear now? Bian Xingyun's face was pale, and her mind was in a mess. The fear that came from the bottom of her heart made her tremble as she struggled hard. But it was obviously of no use. The monster just gently closed its palm, and those sharp bone spurs at the end sank into Bian Xingyun's body, forming an inescapable cage. Bian Xingyun looked at the monster's face that was getting closer and closer. She was terrified, but she still activated her ability again and again, pushing the electric current to the maximum. Die! Die for me! Die! Oh! Zap! 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 But every time, the electric arc only existed for a few seconds before disappearing instantly. It couldn't even penetrate the skin. Give me! Give me! Bian Xingyun's voice trembled because the monster seemed to have finally gotten tired of her tricks. Its closed palm was about to open again, and Bian Xingyun, who was pierced by the fingers, was gradually being torn apart. Bian Xingyun struggled, but she seemed to be relieved. Finally, bam! Splat! Blood splattered on the floor of the warehouse. But Bian Xingyun still didn't die immediately. Her ability could give her cells enough vitality, and, at the same time, it also made her vitality extremely tenacious. However, at this moment, this only prolonged her pain. What she didn't expect was that the real nightmare was yet to come. The monster lowered its head and slowly approached her, opening its mouth full of sharp teeth. Bian Xingyun's pupils shrank as she watched, and finally collapsed. No! No, 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 no! No! I beg you! No! Silence reigned in the warehouse. Guanshan stood in the middle of the pool of blood and looked around, lost in thought. Who am I? Where am I? What am I doing? His memory stopped at the moment when the lightning struck. Due to a strong premonition of danger, he chose to use the new item he had just obtained, Hunter's Authority. Hunter's Authority, prototype, cubic polyhedron. Effect, when night falls, can become the incarnation of Night Demon and obtain the same power until drinking blood. Description, your name echoes in the mountains, and they sing the virtue of the tyrant. In short, the instance dungeon is over. The process is actually not that important. Guanshan shrugged and put away the furnace and the products. Ha! High beam lights shone from behind, and police cars stopped at the entrance of the warehouse. The police officers pointed their guns at Guanshan. The landlord pointed there in a panic. It's here, I saw it here, the leading police officer shouted. The people inside immediately give up resistance, or else, before he could finish, he saw the figure of a young man appear at the entrance of the warehouse. All the guns were pointed at him. Don't move, police. Guanshan waved the ID in his hand and interrupted. Police. Everyone present was dumbfounded. Guanshan coughed twice and said, this case will be taken over by the Taiyan formation. You can go now. If you have any questions, you can ask your superiors now. P.S. Thank you for soap is great, you meow. Reading Giraffe, Crow White Eyes, Great Old One, Book Friend 20204281214311212. Just small talk, W Xianguan, me and Book, Fighting Specialist Doctor, C20202021. Ah Piao Piao Piao. Nanfong Nan Zai, BNK Testing Poison. I'm still a young man, gentle and loyal, have to have a name, reputation, and rewards. Because it has been a long time, the list may have been missed. In short, thank you to all the readers who have rewarded this book. Chapter 202. Logically speaking, there was a high chance that his words were false. However, Guanshan's attitude was too self-righteous, and when he spoke, he had a calm aura that made people subconsciously obey him. It inexplicably made his ridiculous words more believable. While maintaining his gun as a deterrent, the leading police officer dialed the higher-ups' number suspiciously. Station, just as he started speaking, the other party immediately said, "Come back immediately. The matter in Cypress Township has been taken over by a special commissioner. We have no right to interfere." The police officer was taken aback. "Tay in formation? It looks like you've already come into contact with the other party. Remember, you have to cooperate with them as much as possible. If you don't see anything, immediately evacuate with everyone and help seal off the scene. If you see anything, pretend you didn't see anything. Jiang Feng, I've always known you to be steady. Don't ask too much, and don't be curious. This is an order. You have to ensure that there is no conflict with the other party, understand?" The other party's tone was extremely heavy, and there was even an imperceptible sense of fear and reverence. The police officer's expression immediately turned solemn, and he said in a deep voice, "I understand." When the landlord, Zhang Liang, saw Jiang Feng really get everyone to put down their guns and talk calmly with Guanshan before getting everyone to evacuate the scene, he felt uneasy. From Zhang Liang's point of view, Guanshan's words had no credibility at all. When he first came into contact with Guanshan, it was because the latter claimed that he was doing an art business and needed a warehouse. How could a police officer do an art business? Even an ordinary person like him knew that it was illegal. But if he was really carrying out some secret mission, he should be in the closing stages after causing such a huge commotion. He didn't hide it all, so why didn't the police know anything about it? Only when they arrived did they realize it was a misunderstanding. Zhang Luliang felt that there was something fishy about it, or even a shocking conspiracy. After all, the woman in strange clothes seemed to have come to seek revenge, but now, that woman was nowhere to be seen. Could it be that she had turned over a new leaf? She must be dead. Zhang Luliang's heart turned cold. Now that Guanshan and the police had reached an agreement, the only outsider left was him, the witness. Wouldn't he be silenced later? At the thought of this, Zhang Luliang's legs turned to jelly and he fell to the ground. He stared at the warehouse in front of him in a daze. Jiang Feng looked at the young man in front of him and asked, "Is there anything else you need help with? For example, cleaning up the scene and so on. I will try my best to cooperate." As he looked at Guanshan, he secretly glanced at the interior of the warehouse. The warehouse had lost all light sources. It was pitch black, and almost nothing could be seen clearly. However, one could still vaguely see the reflection of liquid on the ground, and the distinct smell of blood drifted in the air. According to Jiang Feng's many years of experience in handling cases, if this amount of blood was a normal fatal injury, at least 3 people would die. However, the informant, Zhang Liang, said that there was only one woman at that time. Jiang Feng could almost imagine how cruel the scene would be if only this one person died. Although there were no bloodstains on the body of this seemingly ordinary young man in front of him, the bloody aura in his eyes and temperament was extremely similar to that of those extremely vicious criminals, in Jiang Feng's opinion, and perhaps even more terrifying. He recalled Chief Chin's tone and couldn't help but think about the nature of this Tan Formation organization. At this time, when he said that he was cleaning up the scene, it could be that he wanted to test out the truth. No, the logistics department of the Tay and Formation will be fully responsible for the rest of the matters. However, please let the landlord stay. Guanshan shook his head. Although he looked calm on the surface, he was actually somewhat relieved. He wasn't sure that the Tay Formation had really contacted the police, so he said that with a tentative attitude. After all, he didn't really want to have a direct confrontation with the police. With Guanshan's current strength, he could boldly say, "I want to fight 10 people in front of well-trained ordinary people, even if they were holding a gun." Jiang Feng frowned, and his heart couldn't help but thump. "He's just an ordinary person." Guanshan shook his head and said, "It's precisely because he's just an ordinary person that he needs more protection. He's already been implicated. If we let him go now, He won't be the only one to die if they take their anger out on him. Zhang Luoyang was scared out of his wits. He stammered, I didn't see anything. Please spare me. Jiang Feng also secretly took a step toward Zhang Luoyang. Guanshan didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He said helplessly, forget it. I'm not good at dealing with these things. Let's wait for the logistics department to arrive. He looked at the snow fluttering in the night sky. They should be here soon. Jiang Feng was stunned. They're here? Who? He soon found out. Huff, huff, huff. 3 helicopters from the Taiyan formation arrived. They descended from the sky one after another and landed on a flat area nearby. Fortunately, they were already in the suburbs, so the landing sites didn't have to be too scattered. The logistics team was the first to arrive. They first greeted Guanshan, then began to methodically clean up the scene and measure the energy level reaction. Jiang Feng looked at the group of fully armed brawny men and was completely dumbfounded. It wasn't because they were armed, but because he saw his former squad leader in the military. In his opinion, the squad leader was incomparably outstanding in all aspects. Later, he was transferred by the higher-ups and was said to have joined a secret force. Now, he had become the logistics of the Taiyan formation. The squad leader obviously recognized him. His eyes lit up and he grinned at him, but then he immediately restrained himself and cleaned up the bloodstains with the others. The lights in the warehouse were turned on. Under the bright light, the ground was indeed an incomparably tragic murder scene. But there was no corpse, not even a piece of flesh. There were only bloodstains that meandered into a strange picture. Jiang Feng felt that his whole worldview was collapsing. That outstanding and proud squad leader. How could he be willing to be a logistics staff member? At this time, Guanshan was surrounded by a few people from the Yohao group's first team, whom he hadn't seen in a long time. These people didn't speak. They just stood there and looked at Guanshan as if they were looking at a monster. Of course, Gao Yu was originally a person with no personality. Chun Pingyun and Tang Ji were 2 people with a very talkative personality. This made Guanshan have goosebumps. These 2 don't have any ulterior motives, do they? Don't be silent. Guanshan couldn't help but say, why are you just looking at me? Chun Pingyun couldn't help but give a thumbs up. Awesome, Brother Guan. You really killed Drone 1? That's an A-class. Why are you also calling him Brother Guan? Guanshan was helpless. Actually, it's not considered killing. Drone 1 was definitely still alive. The one who died was just a mechanical puppet. It's just that he didn't know where he escaped to, Chun Pingyun chattered on. It hasn't even been 2 months, and you've already killed at least 7 or 8 C-classes. Moreover, they're all high-level combatants. Plus, you fought against a B-class and killed an A-class. If you were in a normal team, with these achievements, you'd already be the captain. He revealed a gossipy expression. With your current strength, you should be able to reach B-class, right? Guanshan glanced at his level, which was stuck at level 20. Should be soon. I should be able to break through soon. Chun Pingyun was first amazed, but then he laughed. But our captain isn't bad either. After the encirclement of the killer bees, she's already broken through to B-class. His vivid description made Guanshan look at Gao Yi with some surprise. The girl tilted her head and snorted coldly. It's just normal. But it wasn't hard to see that she was still very happy. Guanshan vaguely understood why Xia Lei would choose a girl to be the captain. She didn't have the help of a simulator, but she could still level up so quickly. This was an unparalleled talent. Tang Ji winked and whispered, I heard that you were seduced by Qi Xingyu of the Noon Brigade. Her charm ability is very famous. How was it? Guanshan. P.S. Thanks to I Am Bamboo, Reading Giraffe, Book Friend 2020004281214312112, Drunk with You, Waves Passing Silently. Special thanks to I Am Bamboo for the 100000 tip, becoming the 3rd leader of this book. There will be more later. Chapter 203. If you ask me, not only did I fail to be charmed, but I almost killed her? What kind of experience is that? Guanshan complained in his heart, but he couldn't say it out loud. After all, the suspicion of Qi Xingyu's death hadn't dissipated, and he might still be a suspect in the eyes of some people. If he added the fact that he pulled out his gun, it would be even harder to clear his name. Especially, he couldn't explain why he pulled out his gun and killed Qi Xingyu when she was obviously trying to charm him. Could it be that he loved Xin Jilya too much? Well, that's very likely. Guanshan casually said a few words and brushed the matter aside. Gao Yi asked, "What's going on here?" Shen Pingyun also returned to the topic at hand. We just came back from north of Hangzhou, and suddenly there was news of a spirit-type item being leaked nearby, which caused a group of ability users to fight over it. It was a bit big, so we had to take action to solve it. Halfway through, we heard that something had happened here, so we realized that it might be a diversion. We hurried over and found out who you were fighting with. Guanshan looked back and said, "Do you know Freedom Logistics?" Tang, Ji looked serious. "Them? That's not good." Chun Pingyun explained, "They're not a simple criminal organization, but a gray business organization that has connections with many ability user organizations." He suddenly understood. No wonder. The spirit-type item was being transported by Freedom Logistics. They're self-directed and self-acting. Guanshan raised his eyebrows. Not a simple criminal organization. So, it's a criminal organization? Aren't we going to deal with the Taiyan formation? We can't. Tang, Ji shook his head. They're a bit like the Guai sect. Their composition is very complicated, and they have too many backgrounds. Once something happens, many organizations will support them. Gao Yi stared at the bloodstains on the ground. You kill them? Did you leave any evidence? Guanshan said subconsciously. No, I've always been clean. Chun Yunping, Tang Ji Gao Ye's mouth twitched. I didn't ask you. I'm talking about evidence that can prove that they're Freedom Logistics. Guanshan, oh no, I subconsciously put myself in the position of the criminal. Guanshan coughed dryly and said awkwardly, I don't think so. The reward he received this time did not have anything to do with the other party's identity. The other party seemed reckless, but was actually very cautious. That's bad. Tang Ji snorted. Free Logistics will definitely say that these people are all temporary workers and that they accidentally recruited criminals. They will definitely reflect on it in the future and strengthen their recruitment criteria. Judging from how familiar he was with the excuse, it seemed that this wasn't the first time Freedom Logistics had done something like this. Guanshan was also helpless. In other words, there's no one to blame for this injustice now. He let out a long sigh. But these people are here for my spirit-type items. There's no guarantee that they won't come back. Takaya said firmly, we will investigate. I won't let them come again. Xiaolei's voice suddenly rang out. Everyone followed the voice and saw the elegant, middle-aged man walking over. He smiled at them and nodded at Guanshan. Minor Xia, everyone in the team said in unison. Guanshan was a little surprised. Didn't you say there's no way? Xiaolei chuckled and said, the Taiyan formation can't do anything to Free Logistics, but that doesn't mean that I, Xiaolei, can't protect a person. My reputation is still somewhat useful. Guanshan had chatted with Xiaolei for a while at the Meridian base. He vaguely knew about Xiaolei's past achievements and reputation. After all, he was a retired Class A, so using his connections to protect a small Class C should be possible. Then we'll have to rely on you, old Xia. Guanshan moved forward and held Xiaolei's hand with a pleading expression. Xiaolei chuckled, thinking to himself, if I don't protect you, who knows what your little girlfriend will do? Xiaolei said warmly, I'm the one who recruited you, so I'll definitely take responsibility until the end. Moreover, you're a member of the Youhao group. I can't let outsiders bully you. While everyone in the team was moved, he changed the topic. Moreover, I've received orders from above. After the new year, you'll be participating in an important mission. Even if I don't do anything, the Central Investigation Group will definitely do their best to protect you. You should know about this, right? Why did it feel like this was the main reason? Guanshan's mouth twitched. He nodded and said, I know. When will the mission be? Hasn't been decided yet. I still have some personal matters to attend to. Xiaolei muttered, around February next year. At that time, I'll personally take you there. We might have to do a complete strength assessment first. You have to be prepared. Now, enjoy the new year. Should he say that the organization was being considerate? Guanshan said helplessly, then this matter can only be left unsettled? Xia Lei patted him on the shoulder. I'll talk to them. At least I can guarantee that you won't be implicated in the aftermath. Guanshan nodded. This matter was considered to have ended there. Everyone missed the battle, but since they were already here, they started to analyze the logistics team and speculate on how Guanshan would deal with the enemy this time. On the other side, the police officer, Jiang Feng, seemed to be an old acquaintance of someone from the logistics team. After getting Xia Lei's permission, that person went to a corner to catch up with Jiang Feng. The two of them talked until their faces were covered in tears, crying and laughing at the same time. No one knew what sad past they were talking about. However, after the conversation, Jiang Feng would definitely have to erase his memory, so they just let them be. Xia Lei and Guanshan stood at the side and watched. Xia Lei suddenly said, "By the way, I heard that you've been doing charity recently?" Guanshan was stunned and said, "Yes, I asked Shuman Lin to help me run a shelter to take in the disabled and orphans." Xia Lei smiled. "Count me in. After so many years, I've saved up a lot of money with nowhere to spend. It's good to do some charity. Having money and nowhere to spend it. Did you hear what a human was saying?" Guanshan nodded with a subtle expression, but then he suddenly realized that something was wrong. "What about your family?" Xia Lei was a little melancholy. "They're gone. When I was young and impetuous, I offended someone and my whole family was killed." His tone was casual, but what he said was a hair-raising story. One could only imagine what kind of bloodshed it must have been to make Xia Lei what he was today. Guanshan was awe-inspiring. He had a new understanding of the battle between ability users. Since he was already involved, he had to advance or retreat. If he wasn't strong enough, it might be his family that was sacrificed. And for him, it was Shen Dinghua. Xia Lei suddenly turned to look at Guanshan. "Actually, I once doubted my judgment and thought that maybe I shouldn't have kept you." Guanshan was silent. Xia Lei continued, "But when you came back from Liaoshan and chose to settle down the villagers of Baihe village and used your own money to build a shelter, I knew that I wasn't wrong." His gaze was deep as he said in a low voice, "Ability users are born superior to others. If they can cast their gaze on the weak and extend a helping hand, then they must have an indelible conscience. I've always thought so. This is also the meaning of the Taiyan formation." Guanshan smiled. "They seem to call me Demon God." Xia Lei also smiled. "Shouldn't you be fierce to your enemies?" "That year, when I took revenge, I didn't use the nickname Celestial Being." The atmosphere between the two suddenly became more harmonious. Guanshan chatted with Xia Lei while checking his harvest. Experience plus 32,000. Final boss has been killed. Game simulation completed. Zombie Siege 2. Final boss killed. 11 evaluation level. Elite monster killed. 11 evaluation level. Obtained items. Backpack expansion slots *10. Evaluation level. Perfect. Obtained rewards. Game coins *40,000. Skill points *2. Unlocked achievement. All rewards have been sent to the backpack. Please check. Settlement complete. Please wait patiently for the next simulation to start. The reward this time was a total of 10 backpack slots. And during the settlement, the scene was not destroyed. P.S. Thank you, League Leader, for your reward. Second update.